A single hand rests upon the ivory keys, embodying the belief that everyone is born with a divine gift. Our protagonist watches with bated breath, wondering if she will ever find the talent to make her special. The fingers dance across the piano with a speed and precision that seems otherworldly. On the grand stage, a master pianist commands the room, lost in the rhythm of her own soul. Sweat beads on her brow as she pours every ounce of her being into the professional performance. Yet, for most people, the things they love and the things they are meant for are worlds apart. The young girl stares in absolute awe, her heart racing at the sheer brilliance before her. From behind, the pianist looks like a titan, completely dominating the instrument. Her eyes burn with a fierce, concentrated passion that only the truly gifted possess. In the vast, empty concert hall, she stands alone as a beacon of pure talent. Looking down at her own trembling hands, the girl feels like nothing more than a talentless pretender. Her expression wilts as she realizes how far she is from reaching those professional heights. The elegant red fabric of the performer's dress pools around her as she takes a moment of silence. She clutches her chest, feeling the echoes of the music still vibrating through her body. Standing tall beside the grand piano, she is the very image of grace and success. As she turns to face the audience, she is met with a thunderous wave of standing ovation. Deep in the crowd, the red-haired girl can only dream of receiving that kind of recognition just once. The master's gaze is cold and focused, a stark contrast to the girl's burning envy. Later, at a modern estate, sunlight bathes the exterior of a beautiful new home. The girl instructs the movers to place her new acquisition directly in her bedroom. Her mother watches with a crossed arm, skeptical expression, clearly judging the purchase. The girl looks up, surprised by her mother's sudden questioning of her choice. Outside, professional moving crew carefully hauls the heavy equipment into the house. She tries to explain that this specific European model was a technical deal she couldn't pass up. Her mother remains unimpressed, noting that a brand new piano wouldn't have cost much more. But for the girl, it wasn't about the price. It was about the unique sound and touch of this specific instrument. She remembers the first time her fingers touched these specific keys and felt a connection. In the golden glow of the music shop, she knew this was the only piano for her. Her mother lets out a sigh of resignation, deciding to let her daughter have her way. However, she warns her to be cautious when buying items secondhand. As she walks away, she cryptically tells her to watch out for the previous owner. The girl stands frozen, the chilling superstition lingering in the air like a bad omen. Late that night, bare feet creep across the cold wooden floor in the darkness. Startled by a sudden noise, she stands in the doorway of her room, her heart pounding. She shakes off the fear, telling herself that her mother's stories are just ridiculous nonsense. Cautiously, she approaches the silent piano, determined to prove there's nothing to fear. Her hand trembles as it reaches out toward the dark, polished wood. Just as she is about to touch the keys, a heavy silence fills the room. Suddenly, she's back in bed, paralyzed with terror as the room fills with an impossible sound. A dark, shadowy figure sits at the bench, its fingers flying across the keys of her new piano. Shaking violently, she hides under the covers, wondering if ghosts are actually real. Tears of pure fright stream down her face as she realizes she's trapped with a phantom. The ethereal, smoky hand of the spirit moves with a grace no living human could match. But as the melody takes hold, her fear begins to give way to a sudden, piercing realization. The ghost is playing Debussy's Reverie, and the sound is more beautiful than anything she's ever heard. Even though the hands are made of shadow, they strike the keys with perfect, delicate precision. The girl listens from her bed, captivated by the sheer level of talent on display. Sparks of magical light begin to emanate from the spirit's fingertips with every note. She feels her spirit lifting, as if she's drifting through a sparkling sea of pure sound. Her eyes reflect the shimmering magic of the performance, her terror completely forgotten. The shadowy pianist continues the mesmerizing concerto, weaving a spell of pure music. When the final note fades, the girl finds herself gasping for air, overwhelmed by the experience. Forgetting the danger, she sits up and enthusiastically cheers bravo for the ghostly performer. The dark silhouette freezes, slowly turning its head to acknowledge its unexpected audience. A faint, mysterious smile forms within the darkness of the spirit's face. Suddenly, the shadow dissolves, revealing a stunningly beautiful woman bathed in celestial light. The girl's jaw drops in shock as she comes face to face with the gorgeous entity. In the quiet of the night, the amateur and the master ghost stare at each other in a moment of pure wonder. The two stand face to face in the moonlight, one filled with fangirl excitement and the other with utter confusion. The mysterious woman looks around the room, her fear replaced by a growing sense of disorientation as she realizes she has no idea where she is. She turns to the girl with wide, startled eyes, demanding to know how she could have possibly ended up inside a stranger's house. Darin stares back, realization sinking in that this powerful spirit doesn't seem to remember a single thing about her own existence. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, Darin prepares to explain the impossible situation they've both found themselves in. She points directly at the instrument, explaining that she recently purchased the piano, and it seems this woman is the ghost tethered to it. The spirit's jaw drops in disbelief, while Darin internally notes how bizarre it feels to have to break the news of someone's death to their own face. From across the room, Darin watches the woman's skeptical reaction, as the spirit refuses to believe she could be anything other than a normal human. To prove her point, the woman holds up her hand, insisting that if she were truly a ghost, her body would be completely transparent. She reaches out and strikes the piano keys with force, proving she can still physically interact with the world around her. With a defensive glare, she tells Darin it's incredibly rude to go around accusing people of being dead without any proof. Darin remains calm and proposes a simple test. If the woman can actually touch her hand, she'll admit she was wrong. The blonde spirit looks at her with a mix of hesitation and curiosity, wondering if she should even entertain such a ridiculous idea. She slowly steps away from the piano and reaches out toward the girl sitting on the bed, ready to settle this once and for all. As their hands meet, a strange, ethereal glow erupts at the point of contact, but there is no physical resistance. The spirit gasps in horror as her arm passes right through Darin's body, as if she were nothing more than a trick of the light. A look of pure, unadulterated terror washes over the woman's face as the reality of her condition finally begins to set in. She pulls her hand back and stares at it in total silence, her world crumbling as she realizes the girl was telling the truth. Darin watches her with a look of pity, softly asking if she finally understands that her life has already ended. The word dead echoes in the spirit's mind, her eyes trembling as she struggles to process the weight of that single word. She looks down, her expression hollow and broken, as the weight of her forgotten past begins to press down on her. Hysteria begins to take hold as the woman clutches her head, repeating the realization that she is no longer among the living. Seeing the spirit spiral into a panic, Darin frantically waves her hands, trying to calm her down before things get out of control. Suddenly, the woman's expression shifts into one of intense focus, as if a spark of memory has just flickered back to life. Darin stops mid-sentence, her eyes widening as she senses a sudden change in the ghost's aura. With newfound conviction, the blonde woman looks up and firmly declares that she is definitely not dead. Darin's head pops into the frame with a skeptical look, reminding her that she just admitted to having zero memories a moment ago. The spirit blushes with frustration, insisting that even if she can't explain it, she just feels that she's still alive in some way. Darin leans in, asking the obvious question. If she isn't dead, then why on earth is she appearing as a transparent ghost? The woman grips her hair in frustration, her mind a blank wall whenever she tries to dig for the answers she needs. Darin narrows her eyes in thought, wondering if there is a specific trigger or condition required for the woman to regain her memories. The spirit points an excited finger at her, realizing that Darin might actually be onto something with that theory. Darin observes her closely, noting that the woman only seems to remember things when she is asked a very specific question. To put this theory to the test, Darin decides to start with something simple and asks if the woman is 15 years old. The blonde woman responds with a quick and confident no, as if the answer was right on the tip of her tongue. Darin continues the interrogation, leaning in closer as she asks if the spirit's age is actually 17. The woman's face lights up with a shock of recognition as she triumphantly confirms that she is indeed 17. Both of them sit in silence for a moment, marveling at how a memory could be so inaccessible one second and perfectly clear the next. Darin explains the logic, pointing out that broad questions seem to yield nothing while specific details act like a key to her mind. The spirit looks confused, her hand hovering near her head as she tries to grasp the complexity of her own mental state. Darin holds up a finger, illustrating her point by saying that asking for a name is far too broad for the spirit to handle right now. The woman looks stunned, realizing for the first time that she doesn't even know what people used to call her. To drive the point home, Darin asks the direct question, "What is your name?" The blonde spirit immediately clutches her head in pain, her eyes glowing with the strain of trying to pull a name out of the void. Darin watches her struggle, noting that her theory was 100% correct. The woman is completely locked out of her own identity. The spirit looks at Darin with desperate, pleading eyes, asking what she is supposed to do if she can't even remember who she is. Darin stares at her for a long beat, her mind racing as she considers the strange entity sitting in her bedroom. She thinks back to the incredible performance she witnessed earlier, remembering how the spirit moved across the keys with supernatural grace. Darin realizes that this woman's talent isn't just impressive, it's the kind of world-class skill that could overshadow anyone. While the ghost continues to lament her lost identity, Darin recognizes that she is looking at a musical genius who could never lose a competition. A bold idea begins to form in Darin's mind, and she looks up at the spirit with a serious expression. The woman looks back, surprised by the sudden change in Darin's tone as she awaits the girl's next words. Darin lays out her terms. She will help the spirit uncover the secrets of her past in exchange for piano lessons. She clarifies that she doesn't need basic instruction, but rather professional guidance to elevate her playing to the next level. Looking at the spirit sitting by the piano, Darin admits that her true desire is to capture people's hearts with the same magic she just witnessed. The ghost looks contemplative, weighing the offer of a partnership that could finally give her some answers. A wide, confident smile spreads across the woman's face as she decides to accept the deal. Her expression turns slightly mischievous as she warns Darin that she is an incredibly strict teacher, so she better be prepared for hard work. Darin nods her head enthusiastically, feeling like she's just made a pact with a musical deity rather than a terrifying ghost. With the agreement sealed, Darin decides that the very first thing they need to handle is giving the spirit a proper name. A montage of guesses follows, with Darin throwing out common names like Namjai or Nick, only to be met with constant rejection. She continues through a list of traditional names, but none of them seem to spark even the slightest bit of recognition in the ghost. 2 hours later, Darin is laughing at the absurdity of the situation, while the poor spirit looks completely drained from all the guessing. Exhausted, the blonde woman suggests that they just give up on the name thing for the time being. Darin refuses to back down, insisting that she needs something to call her if they're going to be working together every day. The spirit looks at her with a gentle, curious smile and asks Darin to choose a name that she thinks suits her personality. Darin pauses, her eyes narrowing as she looks at the woman through a completely different lens. She takes in the spirit's radiant appearance, noting how the moonlight seems to make her glow with an ethereal beauty. The word angel almost slips out of Darin's mouth, but she quickly bites it back, feeling a bit embarrassed by the thought. Instead, she suggests the name Fa, pointing her fingers together nervously as she waits for the spirit's reaction. A soft, satisfied smile touches the woman's lips, signaling her approval of the new identity Darin has chosen. She officially accepts the name Fa for the time being, looking much more relaxed than she did hours ago. Darin introduces herself properly, wanting to start their partnership on equal footing. Fa leans in close and places her glowing hand over Darin's, sealing their new bond as teacher and student. She looks at Darin with a playful glint in her eye, calling her little Darin in a teasing tone. Darin immediately protests, pointing out that she is also 17 and definitely not little. Fa laughs it off and gets down to business, asking exactly when Darin's next big piano competition is scheduled. Darin looks away, her expression turning somber as she realizes just how little time they actually have left. The weight of the situation hits Fa as Darin reveals the shocking truth. The competition is only 3 days away. The quiet night is suddenly shattered by a loud, panicked scream of "Hyat" that echoes from the house's balcony. A soccer player's cleat connects with the ball, signaling the start of a grueling match. Whether it's the high-stakes arc of a basketball shot or the precision of a tennis serve, mastery takes years of dedication. A lone pianist sits under the harsh glare of the spotlight, the weight of the audience pressing down on him. Hundreds of hours of sweat and tears are channeled into the movement of a single finger across the ivory. The intensity in a performer's eyes reflects the gravity of a judgment that lasts only minutes. A single winner emerges from the sea of competitors, leaving everyone else in the shadows of the stage. The pressure is suffocating as a student tightly grips the plaque that represents their entire future. Late into the night, the keys glow blue under the moonlight during endless, repetitive practice sessions. Fa clutches her face in despair, realizing that the memories of her own struggles are finally resurfacing. She stares ahead with a hollow gaze, haunted by the brutal reality of the competitive world. Darin lets out a frustrated scream, her nerves finally snapping under the weight of the deadline. She offers a sheepish, terrified grin as she admits to making yet another basic error. Fa groans in agony, unable to believe how far her student still has to go. The ghost huddles on the bed in a state of total defeat while Darin stands awkwardly by the piano. Fa looks like she's about to lose her mind, her eyes wide with the realization that they are doomed. With no other options left, Fa presses her hands together in a desperate, silent prayer for a miracle. The morning of the competition arrives at the Grand Conservatory building, bathed in an unforgiving light. The teacher's glasses reflect the morning sun as he delivers a stern, final warning. Darin looks like she's about to hyperventilate, while her teacher looms over her with a look of pure disappointment. He shouts her name to snap her out of her trance, causing her to jump in fright. They sit on a park bench where the teacher continues his lecture, oblivious to the ghost watching nearby. Darin stares at the ground, her voice trembling as she gives a dejected response to his demands. The teacher checks his posture and turns to leave, his patience clearly exhausted for the day. He walks away without looking back, leaving a trail of harsh, discouraging words in his wake. The girls watch his retreating figure, the silence of the garden feeling heavier than ever. Fa comments on how brutal the teacher's honesty is, her expression shifting to one of pity. She looks at Darin with a newfound understanding of the girl's crushing lack of confidence. Gently, Fa reaches out to touch Darin's face, trying to ground her in the moment. She tells her student to stop sulking and to fix her expression before they head inside. Darin remains hunched over on the bench, the weight of her perceived failures pinning her down. She admits how humiliating it feels to be exposed as a fraud after acting so confident. Fa takes a seat beside her, offering a calm presence to counter Darin's spiraling thoughts. Darin looks away, still convinced that she doesn't belong among the elite players in the building. Fa strikes a determined pose, promising to be right there on stage with her every step of the way. A flicker of hope returns to Darin's eyes as she looks up at her spectral mentor. They stand up together, prepared to face the judgment that awaits them inside the hall. Fa guides Darin forward, maintaining a professional focus on the task of reclaiming her composure. The ghost flashes a bright, encouraging smile, trying to mask her own internal doubts. Darin's back is tense as she walks toward the entrance, the gravity of the situation setting in. Fa follows closely behind, her mind racing with the technical challenges Darin still hasn't mastered. Despite the odds, Fa cheers her on with a forced enthusiasm to keep the girl moving. Inside the dimly lit concert hall, the audience settles into their velvet seats in anticipation. A woman named May sits in the crowd, her hand resting thoughtfully on her chin as she waits. Her eyes widen in surprise as she spots Darin's teacher approaching through the rows. The teacher stops to exchange a few professional words with his colleague before the start. May listens with a skeptical expression, her arms crossed as they discuss the day's lineup. The teacher holds up 3 fingers, noting that he has several students performing today. He shifts to a single finger, admitting that one particular student is a major cause for concern. They both turn their attention toward the stage, where the next performance is about to begin. A pair of formal shoes takes a steady, rhythmic step up the stairs leading to the stage. Each step echoes through the hallway, signaling the point of no return for the young pianist. Fa frantically grabs Darin's shoulders, begging her to walk properly and keep her head up. The ghost looks at Darin with expression of pure, unadulterated worry as the girl trembles. Darin stands alone on the vast stage, her silhouette small against the massive grand piano. Her feet move across the polished floor, every step feeling like it's happening in slow motion. Fa rubs her eyes, the stress of the environment beginning to take a toll on her spirit. Suddenly Fa pauses, her finger hovering near her eye as a strange sensation washes over her. She looks around the grand hall, the architecture, and the lights triggering something deep inside. A look of absolute shock takes over Fa's face as the environment feels impossibly familiar. Her pupils dilate with a sudden, sharp realization that she has been in this exact spot before. Darin turns around with a nervous smile, wondering why her mentor has suddenly stopped. Fa snaps out of her trance and rushes toward the piano to take her place by Darin's side. She commands Darin to take a deep breath and find her focus before the first note. In the audience, people begin to whisper and point at the girl who seems to be talking to thin air. Mei looks on with a sharp, judgmental gaze, realizing this must be the student the teacher mentioned. Darin exhales a shaky breath, her hands hovering tentatively over the cold ivory keys. Fa stares intensely at the sheet music, knowing that Darin's fragile state won't survive a single error. A close-up shows the moment of impact as a finger finally strikes the first key of the piece. The teacher and Mei lean forward, their faces etched with professional tension and anxiety. Fa lets out a scream of internal agony as she witnesses the disaster unfolding before her eyes. Darin's face contorts in pure horror as she realizes she has completely botched the very first note. Darin gasps for air, her lungs burning as the weight of the stage crushes her spirit. Her trembling fingers hover uselessly over the keys, paralyzed by the silence of the hall. Panic seizes her gaze, sweat beating on her forehead as she realizes she's completely lost. Fa screams from the sidelines, desperate to snap her student out of this death spiral. The ghost mentor clutches her head, her frustration boiling over as she watches the opportunity slip away. In the audience, Mei grips her own arm, the tension in the room becoming physically painful. She can barely stand to look at the stage, feeling a wave of secondhand embarrassment for the amateur. The entire row of observers looks on in disappointment, the air heavy with the scent of failure. To Darin, her own mind feels like a complex machine that has finally ground to a halt with a broken gear. Mei catches the teacher's reaction, seeing the final spark of hope leave his eyes. The instructor covers his face, uttering the crushing words that signal the end of her performance. Darin looks up, her eyes wide with the realization that she's been told to stop. Under the harsh glare of the spotlight, she sits motionless, a small figure swallowed by the vastness of the stage. Alone in the darkness of her own mind, she curls inward, fully embracing her feelings of inadequacy. She recalls the image of Fa, the mentor who seemed like a brilliant sun compared to her own shadow. Looking down at her lap, she convinces herself that she was never meant for this world of talent. Tears finally spill over, tracing lines of defeat down her face as she sobs silently. Her hands shake uncontrollably, the last bit of her confidence crumbling into dust. Suddenly, Fa lunges forward, grabbing Darin and shouting directly into her face to break the trance. Darin is jolted back to reality, staring in shock at the intensity of her mentor's redirection. Fa demands that she get it together, refusing to let her quit in the middle of a live performance. Even through her fear, Darin can't help but notice how Fa seems to radiate a blinding, hopeful light. The ghost mentor drops to her knees, looking Darin in the eye with a gaze that demands her full attention. Her expression softens just a fraction, but her resolve to see this through remains as hard as iron. Darin whimpers, asking why she should bother when the outcome of the competition is already decided. Fa goes silent for a beat, her lips thinning as she considers how to reach her student. She stares at Darin with a piercing look, challenging the girl to let time simply pass her by without a fight. With a swift movement, she flicks Darin's forehead to snap her out of her self-pitying thoughts. Darin recoils in pain, baffled when Fa suddenly claims that being eliminated is actually a great outcome. Fa explains that since the pressure of winning is gone, Darin is now free to play however she likes. She spreads her arms wide, reminding Darin that music is supposed to be about freedom, not just points. Turning back with a rebellious glint in her eye, she tells Darin to forget about the judges and the teacher. Darin looks up, her heart racing as she listens to this unconventional and bold advice. Fa leans in closer, her voice becoming a gentle but firm command for Darin to focus. She brings her face near to Darin's, telling her to block out the world and look only at her mentor. Darin is completely mesmerized, the chaos of the concert hall finally fading into the background. A confident, radiant smile breaks across Fa's face, acting as a beacon for her students' recovery. The stage lights shimmer, reflecting the shift in energy as Darin prepares to try one more time. Fa stands close, coaching Darin through a deep, stabilizing breath to steady her nerves. She leans in to whisper a secret strategy, maintaining a strictly professional focus on Darin's composure. Her eyes sparkle with a sudden, mischievous idea to help Darin overcome her paralyzing stage fright. She gestures toward the audience, telling Darin to imagine every person in the room as nothing more than a tree stump. Fa mocks the crowd with a silly gesture, turning the terrifying judges into a harmless joke. A small, genuine smile finally touches Darin's lips as the crushing tension breaks. She bursts into a bright laugh, the heavy burden of expectation finally lifting from her shoulders. Her hands descend upon the keys once more, this time with a renewed sense of purpose. As the first notes ring out, Fa stands beside her, conducting the rhythm with her own fluid movements. She mimics the delicate touch needed for the melody, guiding Darin's technical execution in real time. Darin's eyes sharpen with an intense focus that she has never felt in her entire life. Her fingers dance across the piano, striking the keys with a precision that borders on perfection. Fa watches in awe, her eyes widening as she realizes Darin is finally tapping into her true potential. In the seats, May's head snaps up, her skepticism replaced by a sudden, sharp curiosity. Her jaw drops as the music transforms from a mess into a masterpiece right before her ears. Darin is in the zone now, her face glowing with the sheer effort and passion of her play. Fa stares at her student, stunned by the incredible transformation she is witnessing. She realizes that the disparate notes are now blending together in a way that is nothing short of professional. She sees Darin as she truly is a priceless diamond that was simply hidden beneath a rough exterior. Every movement is fluid and powerful, proving that the girl has finally found her rhythm. Fa clutches her chest, her face lighting up with a proud and deeply satisfied grin. High above the stage, the music swells as the world finally sees the hidden gem that Fa discovered. Darin's fingers fly across the keys with a precision that borders on the impossible. The entire stage seems to shimmer as she pours every ounce of her soul into the grand piano. Her eyes are fixed forward, locked in a trance-like state of pure musical flow. In the stands, Fa leaps to her feet, unable to contain her excitement as she cheers for her student's perfection. Nearby, an observer can only mask his disbelief, his hand trembling as he witnesses the transformation. May is left breathless, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning realization. She stares at the stage, desperately trying to reconcile this masterclass with the girl who struggled just moments ago. From the back of the auditorium, the spotlight frames Darin like a professional at the height of her career. May bites her thumb, her mind racing as she tries to figure out how such a drastic change is even possible. Despite the pressure, Darin remains composed, her focus never wavering from the complex melody. A wave of calm washes over her, clearing the mental fog that usually haunts her performances. For the first time, the fear of failure is gone, replaced by a sparkling clarity in her gaze. Fa watches from the sidelines, a silent guardian ensuring Darin stays on the path they carved together. Darin looks up with a soft expression, recognizing that Fa is the guiding light she's always needed. Fa beams with pride, her hands raised as if to conduct the final, triumphant notes. Suddenly, the harsh blare of a buzzer pierces the air, snapping Darin back to reality. Whispers ripple through the audience as they realize the allotted time has officially run out. May leans back, frustrated that the brilliance she just witnessed was cut so short. She narrows her eyes, finding Darin's unpredictable talent both fascinating and deeply annoying. Believing she's failed once again, Darin offers a somber bow and prepares to leave the stage. She walks toward the exit with her head hung low, convinced her effort wasn't enough. Her eyes are clouded with self-doubt until a familiar voice calls out her name. Fa is there with a radiant grin, giving two enthusiastic thumbs up to validate her hard work. A genuine smile finally breaks across Darin's face as she realizes she actually did change. Later that afternoon, Darin's checkered shoes hit the pavement as she makes a quick exit from the venue. Fa follows closely behind, questioning why they aren't staying to hear the final results. Darin lets out a nervous laugh, admitting she's terrified of the lecture waiting for her from her teacher. She adjusts her backpack, determined to run away and regroup before facing any more consequences. She glances back at Fa, still calling herself a hopeless mess despite the performance. Fa stops her in her tracks, insisting that Darin played like a completely different person once she let go of her fear. Flustered by the praise, Darin begs her mentor to stop offering what she thinks is fake comfort. Fa gets right in her face, challenging her to ask anyone in the room how incredible she truly was. Refusing to accept the truth, Darin covers her ears and starts chanting to drown out Fa's words. She keeps her eyes shut tight, desperately clinging to her old insecurities. Fa lets out a weary sigh, realizing that confidence is the only thing standing in Darin's way. With a serious look, Fa declares that she is officially done teaching Darin the piano. Darin's heart sinks as she stares at Fa, terrified that she's finally been given up on. But Fa clarifies her stance, explaining that Darin already possesses the skill. She just needs the courage to use it. Darin looks at her own hands in a new light, processing the idea that she might actually be special. Fa gives her a firm push, ordering her to stop slouching and hold her high with pride. As the sun begins to set over the city, the building where the competition took place glows in the fading light. May prepares to leave, stepping toward a waiting car as her companion urges her to move faster. She settles into the passenger seat, the golden hour light reflecting off the window as they drive away. May checks her phone, her expression sour as she claims she can't stand the girl she just met. Despite her words, she's already found Darin's social media profile and is scrolling through her posts. She She leans her head against the glass, admitting to herself that Darin has a magnetic quality that's hard to ignore. May wonders about the magic in Darin's playing, a feeling that seems to linger long after the music stops. Her friend Jamie dismisses the thought, telling May to enjoy her boring piano music in silence. Jamie shoots her a sharp look from the driver's seat, wondering where May picked up such a prickly attitude. May stares blankly at her phone, completely tuned out from the conversation around her. She rests her head on her hand, closing her eyes as the memory of the melody returns. A look of deep longing crosses May's face as she realizes the music reminds her of someone else. She pulls up an old video on her phone, watching a pair of hands play the piano with identical grace. The screen reveals a younger, radiant Fa, proving that Darin's magic is a legacy she's now carrying forward. Under the glow of a crescent moon, the quiet exterior of the house hides the tension brewing within its walls. Darin's mother sighs in deep exasperation, frustrated that her daughter once again kept a major piano competition a secret. The three of them occupy the kitchen as the lecture continues, though the ghost mentor stands silently between the mother and daughter. Darin focuses on her meal, pointing out that her mother is usually far too busy to attend her events anyway. Her mother counters that she was already dressed in a suit for work and could have easily adjusted her professional schedule. Darin picks at her food with a heavy heart, insisting that her performance today wasn't even worth watching. She looks down with a shadow over her eyes, claiming it is better that her mother didn't witness her struggle on stage. The weight of the day's failure hangs heavy as Darin admits she would have been mortified to have an audience for her breakdown. Seeing the young pianist spiral into self-pity, Fa notes that Darin has become a literal magnet for sadness. Darin's mother looks on with concern, realizing just how much psychological pressure the girl is enduring. Darin grips her glass tightly, the mere thought of facing her harsh teacher again causing her hand to tremble. Her mother leans in with a serious proposal, suggesting that a change in mentorship might be the only way to relieve the stress. She takes a sip of her drink while explaining that being terrified of a teacher is a sign that the partnership isn't working. Darin tries to defend her instructor's professional skill, but her voice lacks any real conviction. The young girl looks completely drained, her eyes reflecting the exhaustion of trying to meet impossible standards. The mother emphasizes that she isn't trying to crush Darin's confidence, but simply wants her to find a more supportive path. Realizing the conversation is becoming too intense, Fa notices Darin's face turning pale from the overwhelming stress. To break the tension, the ghost sticks out her tongue and teases Darin about getting premature wrinkles from all the nagging. Startled by the ghost's sudden antics, Darin nearly chokes on her water while trying to maintain her composure. A burst of nervous energy fills the room as Darin frantically tries to hide her reaction to the invisible spirit. Later that night, the lights are finally cut as the household settles into a deep, uneasy silence. Darin lies in bed with her eyes wide open, her mind racing too fast for sleep to take hold. Beside her, the ethereal presence of Fa makes the shared bed feel strangely crowded and surreal. Darin thinks back to earlier that evening, when she watched the spirit perched comfortably on the piano bench. Fa had demonstrated her ghostly nature, showing how she can phase through solid objects or choose to lean against them at will. She reached out toward a framed picture, explaining that while she can touch things, she cannot produce a loud sound. The ghost admitted that the only object she can truly connect with in a physical, resonant sense is the piano. Darin wondered aloud if this meant the spirit could interact with anything directly related to the world of music. The technical discussion was interrupted by a massive yawn as the long day finally caught up with the young pianist. Fa noticed the fatigue and suggested they put an end to their conversation for the night, so Darin could rest. Darin tried to be a good host, grabbing a pillow and offering to sleep on the hard floor so the guest could have the bed. Fa immediately rejected the idea, scolding Darin for even suggesting such a ridiculous sacrifice in her own room. Back in the present, Darin lies still, remembering how they eventually agreed to just share the mattress. She shifts slightly toward the edge, still feeling incredibly self-conscious about sharing her personal space with a spirit. Under the dim moonlight, Fa looks absolutely radiant, her spectral form glowing with a soft, otherworldly beauty. Darin suddenly sits up in a panic, worried that her racing heart might make her look like some sort of pervert. Fa turns her head with a curious expression, asking what exactly is keeping Darin so restless. Looking up at the dark ceiling, Darin admits she is dreading the next time she has to face her teacher. Fa watches her closely, her expression softening as she prepares to offer the young girl some much-needed reassurance. She shifts her position to face Darin, asserting that no one with decent ears would ever call her playing bad. Darin remains skeptical, arguing that in the professional world, the final result is the only thing people care about. Fa reaches out with a playful finger, reminding her that one elimination is not the end of her musical career. With a confident smirk, the ghost tells Darin to stand tall and ignore anyone who doesn't see her true potential. Darin listens in silence, the bold and defiant advice of her mentor slowly starting to sink in. From a wide perspective, the two of them look like ordinary friends sharing secrets in the middle of the night. Darin stares back at the ceiling, wondering if Fa truly believes in her talent or is just offering comforting words. Regardless of the reason, the young girl realizes that this is the first time anyone has shown such absolute faith in her. Fa catches her staring and lets out a playful, toothy laugh, her eyes sparkling with vibrant energy. A singular thought consumes Darin's mind. What can someone like her ever do repay a spirit for this much trust? She breaks the quiet again, softly asking Fa if she truly wants to remember the details of her own past. Fa pauses, her gaze turning distant and thoughtful as she considers the mystery of her forgotten life. She admits that because her memory is a total blank, she doesn't feel much of an emotional connection to her previous self. Darin asks if being an amnesiac spirit is frightening, unable to imagine such a lonely and disconnected existence. Fa looks down, the vulnerability of her situation finally showing through her usually confident facade. She looks back at Darin, her expression filled with a genuine warmth that transcends her ghostly nature. She leans in close, explaining that she isn't afraid because she knows Darin will be there to help her. With a proud and mischievous smile, she officially acknowledges Darin as her one and only disciple. The weight of those words hits Darin hard, making her realize the depth of the spiritual bond they have formed. She closes her eyes, making a silent vow that she won't just try to help, she has an obligation to succeed. Looking at their feet beneath the blankets, the physical and spiritual worlds seem to blur together in the moonlight. Fa waits expectantly as Darin prepares to reveal a plan that could change the course of their journey. Darin turns to her with newfound determination, promising that they will try a new idea together starting tomorrow. Her eyes are filled with a fierce light, fueled by the desire to repay the ghost who saved her passion for music. Fa looks at her with a look of profound trust, simply agreeing to follow wherever her disciple leads. Morning light filters through the sheer curtains, signaling the start of a brand new day. Darin remains lost in a deep sleep, blissfully unaware of her surroundings. Her eyes flutter open slowly as the morning sun begins to stir her from her dreams. She's immediately greeted by Fa, who is leaning in close with a playful, wake-up smirk. Darin mumbles a groggy morning greeting, her heart skipping a beat at the sudden proximity of her mentor. Needing a moment to process the shock, Darin quickly reaches for the door handle to make her exit. She pauses for a second, still trying to shake off the intensity of waking up to such a radiant face. Fa watches her with a bright, innocent smile, seemingly oblivious to how much she's flustered her disciple. In the kitchen, Darin firmly sets some ground rules about personal space and privacy. With a quick huff, Darin ducks out of the room, determined to regain her professional composure. She leans against the other side of the door, her face flushing a deep shade of crimson. Slumping to the floor, Darin wonders how she's supposed to survive living with such a distracting ghost. She folds her hands in a mock prayer, desperately trying to meditate her way back to a calm mindset. She silently apologizes to her mother for being so easily captivated by her mentor's overwhelming charm. Back in the room, Fa asks about the specific clan Darin mentioned the night before. The two sit across from each other on the bed, ready to dive into the mystery of Fa's forgotten identity. Darin pulls out her smartphone, the key to their first attempt at gathering information. She explains that they should start by calling the Secondhand shop, where the piano was originally purchased. Fa looks skeptical, questioning if a professional shop would really hand over a previous owner's private data. Darin remains optimistic, insisting that they'll never know the truth unless they try every lead. Fa watches intensely as the call begins to ring, her hope hanging by a single thread. Darin explains the situation to the shopkeeper, hoping for any lead on the instrument's history. Fa leans forward, hanging onto every word of the tense, one-sided conversation. Her eyes narrow in disappointment as the shopkeeper clearly refuses the request for information. Darin's shoulders slump as she realizes the shop won't even provide a simple name. With a sigh of defeat, Darin taps the screen to end the fruitless phone call. She feels like a failure, but Fa tries to lighten the mood with a joke about being haunted. Darin rests her head on her arms, feeling guilty that she can't help her mentor more effectively. Fa lets out a cheerful laugh, claiming that being a spirit is actually quite comfortable and carefree. Darin looks up at her, unconvinced by Fa's attempts to brush off her tragic situation. She can't help but wonder if living without memories is truly as heavenly as Fa claims. Darin stares into Fa's eyes, trying to imagine the fear of waking up as a total blank slate. The thought of being trapped in that terrifying void of nothingness chills Darin to her very bone. Her resolve hardens. She refuses to let Fa remain lost in the dark forever. Fa catches her staring and wonders what's going on in her disciple's mind. Darin admits she has another idea, though she warns it might be a bit ugly to confront. She lies back on the bed, looking up at Fa with a serious, focused expression. Fa rests her head on her hand, intrigued by where this new line of thinking is going. A confident, eager grin spreads across Fa's face as she encourages Darin to speak her mind. Darin explains her original plan to search for prodigies. Given Fa's obvious elite skill level, she clenches the bed sheets, realizing how many talented people are actually out there in the world. Darin admits that searching for talent is a needle in a haystack in a world full of geniuses. She suggests a darker approach, searching for the specific tragedy that left Fa in this state. Darin stares intently, calculating the steps needed to find a record of the incident. She states that if it wasn't a sudden illness, there's only one other likely culprit for her condition. A heavy silence fills the room as Darin suggests it was a devastating car accident. Darin sits up, warning Fa that this path might lead to memories she doesn't want to face. She asks Fa directly if she is truly prepared to go through with such a grim search. Fa offers a soft, determined smile, her mind already made up about finding the truth. She leans in, declaring with absolute certainty that she wants to find out who she was. The two share a high-spirited moment of solidarity, ready to tackle the mystery together. Darin begins to narrow down the search criteria, focusing on major accidents involving young women. She looks at Fa, wondering if they are about to uncover absolute nightmare. Fa gasps in terror, her hands flying to her mouth as the trauma begins to resurface. Darin screams out Fa's name, snapping her back to reality after the sudden shock. Fa's eyes are wide with lingering fear, her pupils dilated from the intensity of the vision. She looks at her own hands, trembling as she tries to understand what she just saw. Darin checks on her, but Fa forces a smile, pretending everything is perfectly fine. The moment is broken by Darin's mother calling her from the other room for breakfast. Darin stands up to leave, still feeling uneasy about Fa's sudden, sharp reaction. Fa waves her off with a cheerful gesture, insisting that Darin go eat. She maintains a bright facade until the very moment Darin is out of sight. As soon as she's alone, Fa's expression collapses into a mask of pure, unadulterated dread. The phantom scent of gasoline and blood fills her senses, refusing to fade away. She stares into the distance, haunted by the possibility that her original body is still out there. Fa looks at her hands, realizing that as a spirit, she is at least free and safe. She flexes her fingers, grateful that she can still play the piano in this form. She clenches her fists, terrified that returning to her body would mean returning to a mangled mess. Her hands shake as she contemplates the horrific condition of the person in the wreck. Fa stares ahead with hollow eyes, questioning if she would even be human if she went back. Darin returns home, finding the ghost girl sitting silently on the bed waiting for her. Settling in beside her, Darin asks if the sudden trance earlier was triggered by a specific memory. Fa looks away, her eyes clouded with the weight of the horrific crash she's keeping hidden. She closes her eyes tight, deciding that the truth of her accident is far too heavy to share with Darin right now. She puts on a brave face and feigns a headache, claiming she was simply overthinking their investigation. The next morning, the sun shines over the school building as a new day begins. Darin looks completely exhausted as she stands outside in her school uniform. Fa has followed her all the way to campus, insisting she has nothing better to do than watch over her student. Darin suggests she should have stayed home to practice the piano instead. Fa quickly points out the absurdity of that, imagining Darin's mother's terror at seeing a piano play itself in an empty room. With a confident grin, Fa declares that she's here to instill the courage Darin currently lacks. Darin sighs, wondering if her ghost mentor's training sessions always have to be this intense. Fa remains firm, asserting that her seriousness is exactly what a struggling student needs. Beneath her playful exterior, Fa's expression softens as she admits to herself that this mission is her own path to redemption too. Suddenly, Fa barks out a command for Darin to fix her posture, startling the girl right in front of the school gates. Inside the classroom, the teacher begins the day's lecture at the front of the room. Fa leans back in the empty space, looking utterly bored by the academic routine. She notes that because the class has an odd number of students, Darin is the only one left sitting without a desk mate. Darin keeps her head down, focusing intensely on her notes to avoid any unwanted attention. She reflects on how her height forced her to the back of the room, because she was blocking everyone else's view. Fa watches from the side, realizing that Darin's physical presence has always been a source of social friction. As the school day ends, the two walk through the quiet hallways together. Fa looks at the girl beside her, her heart sinking as she realizes how lonely Darin's life truly is. Even in a crowded school, Darin moves like a ghost herself, isolated from the world around her. Fa observes that no one even glances toward them, as if Darin has become invisible to her peers. They walk in silence, two souls drifting through a space where they don't seem to belong. The orange glow of sunset baths the school exterior as they find a place to rest. Darin quietly sips on a carton of milk, trying to decompress from the day. Fa sits beside her on the concrete steps, asking why she chose such a secluded spot behind the building. Darin looks down, admitting that sitting alone in the classroom makes her feel like an outcast. She recalls the painful sight of her classmates huddled in groups, leaving her as the odd one out. Fa tries to encourage her, suggesting that talking to other people shouldn't be that difficult. Darin lets out a rare laugh, noting the irony that she can talk to a ghost more easily than a living person. She looks at Fa with genuine warmth, confessing that she only feels this comfortable because Fa is special. The unexpected compliment catches Fa completely off guard, making her face flush a deep red. Fa bursts into laughter, teasing Darin for being a natural flirt when she's not being shy. Darin tilts her head in confusion, completely missing the joke. Fa continues to giggle, finding Darin's lack of social awareness both frustrating and endearing. Looking at Darin's long legs, Fa suggests she should use her height to become a popular athlete. Darin stops in her tracks, her expression turning somber at the mention of her stature. She stares at her milk carton, confessing that her height has always been her greatest insecurity. Fa argues that most people would kill for that height, suggesting she could even be a model. Darin's eyes grow distant as she begins to recount the origin of her social anxiety. She remembers a time when she was just a normal, cheerful child playing with her friends. But as she hit a sudden growth spurt, She quickly became the weird one that everyone stared at. The constant, supposedly harmless teasing eventually stole her ability to look people in the eye. She sits slumped over, explaining how she grew to hate being the center of any attention at all. A flash of trauma crosses her eyes as she remembers the pressure of being watched. This fear eventually poisoned her passion, turning every piano performance into a nightmare of perceived judgment. Darin looks at her hands, bitterly stating that she'd be better off if she had just quit the piano long ago. Fa watches her from behind, finally understanding the depth of the girl's internal struggle. She sees Darin trembling, realizing that the girl is terrified of the very dream she refuses to give up. Reaching out, Fa prepares to offer the support that Darin has lacked for so long. She gently cups Darin's face, promising to help her conquer both her social fears and her musical hurdles. Darin freezes, her eyes wide as she feels the ghost's firm and supportive touch. Fa stands tall, her voice full of conviction as she tells Darin that her talent is actually incredible. The words hit Darin like a physical wave, sparking a flicker of hope in her eyes. Without missing a beat, Fa issues her first official homework assignment. Darin must make a friend. Darin panics immediately, clutching her face at the thought of such a terrifying task. Suddenly, a sharp vibration from Darin's skirt pocket interrupts their conversation. Fa leans in, curious about who could be messaging her student at this hour. Darin pulls out her phone, her expression shifting from confusion to pure shock. On the screen, a notification reveals that a girl named Melissa has just started following her. A direct message pops up, demanding that Darin meet her after school without excuses. The scene shifts back to the school gate as the last of the sunlight fades. Darin nervously clutches her bag, realizing her first friend might be a lot more intense than she expected. Standing by the gate is May, her arms crossed and her gaze piercing as she waits for a target. The confrontation is set as May looms over Darin, proving that she has been tracking her every move. The evening sun casts long, orange shadows across the quiet school building. Feet crunch against the cobblestone as two students come to a sudden halt. May suddenly forces Darin back, her presence overwhelming the nervous pianist. A hand slams against the wall, trapping Darin in a cold, technical standoff. May's fingers scrape against the rough stone, emphasizing her intense focus. The height difference is palpable as May looms over her supposed rival. May's eyes burn with a piercing, analytical glare that demands an answer. Stunned and trembling, Darin can barely find the words to respond. From the sidelines, Fa watches the escalating tension with wide-eyed shock. The ghost clutches her head, realizing this meeting is going south fast. Rewinding to earlier, Darin shows Fa a profile on her smartphone. Darin's face turns beet red as she explains the girl's identity. The shy pianist hides behind her hand, clearly intimidated by her idol's reputation. Darin glows with admiration while Fa remains skeptical of this encounter. Sitting together, Darin begins to outline the hierarchy of the music scene. May is a true prodigy, standing as an untouchable figure in professional circles. Her technique is flawless, a product of years spent on international stages. Fa listens intently as Darin praises May's incredible technical achievements. Unconvinced by words alone, Fa demands to hear the girl's actual playing. Darin agrees, eager to prove that May's skill is no exaggeration. She taps the screen to play a video of May's latest performance. Fa leans in, her analytical mind already dissecting every note. The ghost's expression shifts as she recognizes a rare, aggressive talent. In the video, May plays with a forceful style meant to command attention. Fa observes that May's stage presence is designed to overshadow everyone. Finally impressed, Fa admits that May is a pianist worth acknowledging. She encourages Darin to use this shared passion to build a friendship. Darin feels the weight of expectations as Fa pushes her toward the challenge. However, Darin suspects there is something strange about May's sudden outreach. Fa agrees that the tone of the message felt more like a provocation. The text from Melissa is blunt, demanding a meeting after school. Back in the present, Darin follows May into a secluded campus area. Attempting to be brave, Darin asks if there's a specific topic for discussion. May points toward a narrow passage, signaling for them to move away. They step into the shadows of the building, away from the light. Fa grows increasingly nervous about the isolation of this meeting spot. She wonders if pushing Darin to meet May was a tactical mistake. Darin tries to keep things light, asking how May even knew her. May adjusts her jacket, her demeanor remaining icy and strictly professional. Fa mistakenly thinks this is the start of a healthy rivalry. The atmosphere shifts instantly as May prepares to drop a bombshell. A sudden strike against the wall shatters any hope of a friendly chat. May leans in, her voice low and filled with simmering resentment. She accuses Darin of playing with a style that insults her dedication. May's sharp gaze cuts through Darin's attempts to stay calm. Panicked, Darin insists that her performance was nothing more than luck. May refuses to buy the excuse, moving closer to the trembling girl. She points a finger, demanding the truth about Darin's hidden abilities. May reveals she has been digging into Darin's academic and musical history. The realization that her secrets are out leaves Darin completely vulnerable. She looks away, unable to withstand the pressure of May's scrutiny. The sound of a car horn breaks the heavy silence in the alleyway. May pulls back, her interrogation interrupted by the arrival of her ride. A woman in a black car impatiently tells May it is time to depart. May offers one last cold stare, promising this rivalry isn't over. She leaves Darin with a warning that she will be watching. Left alone in the shadows, Darin is left shaken by the encounter. Darin stands rooted to the spot, her fists clenched as the weight of the confrontation sinks in. Fa can't hold back her frustration, venting about how May's abrasive personality completely ruins her good looks. Darin tries to brush off the intensity of the situation, but the exhaustion is etched clearly on her face. The duo begins their trek home, the evening light casting long shadows over their silent walk. The stress of the day is visible in every step Darin takes as she navigates the quiet streets. Her gaze drops, haunted by the memory of the sharp words she was forced to endure. May's cold assessment of her hopeless nature echoes in her mind like a recurring nightmare. Slumping against a nearby wall, Darin feels the crushing pressure of her own perceived inadequacies. Fa attempts to break the somber mood with a dramatic gesture, trying to pull Darin out of her own head. A sudden vibration draws Darin's attention to her phone, breaking her spiral of negative thoughts. A reminder for her upcoming piano lesson flashes on the screen, serving as a stark reality check. She lets out a weary sigh, feeling like her life is becoming an even bigger mess than before. As they continue on, Darin wonders aloud if their paths would have ever crossed under different circumstances. The scene shifts to the next day, where a school bag sits ready on a classroom desk. Fa takes a firm approach to social coaching, insisting that Darin finally follow the plan to talk to people. Darin glances nervously at a classmate, the very idea of starting a conversation feeling like a monumental task. Unexpectedly, a fellow student leans in, breaking the ice with a curious question about her relationships. The classroom atmosphere shifts as girls gather around, eager to gossip about Darin's mysterious connection to May. Caught off guard, Darin awkwardly tries to navigate the sudden influx of social attention. Seeing a golden opportunity, Fa leans in close to suggest a more calculated approach to winning them over. The ghost proposes a manipulative scheme, telling Darin to play the victim to secure their sympathy. Fa's gaze turns sharp and intense as she urges Darin to seize the narrative and squeeze out a few tears. The classmates wait with bated breath, hanging on whatever Darin is about to say next. Fa cheers her on with high energy, desperate for Darin to finally make some progress in her social life. Darin hesitates, her hands trembling as she struggles with the internal conflict of being dishonest. Ultimately, she chooses a simple truth, downplaying the drama to maintain a professional distance. The moment of connection vanishes instantly when a mention of homework distracts the other students. Darin is left with a hollow smile, watching as her potential new friends immediately lose interest. Fa is baffled by the mischance, questioning why Darin didn't follow the manipulative lead. Darin looks away, her quiet resolve suggesting there's a specific reason for her hesitation. She reveals a note with her surprising reasoning. She simply couldn't badmouth May because she is too pretty. Fa is absolutely flabbergasted by the logic, while Darin retreats into her own thoughts and ignores the ghost. Somewhere else, a rolled-up paper comes down with a sharp tap on a familiar head. May's guardian confronts her about her recent behavior, looking for a straight answer regarding her attack with Darin. May reacts with a flash of annoyance, clearly tired of being treated like a delinquent. The guardian doesn't back down, keeping a firm grip on the situation and the rolled paper. May tries to play it off as a harmless interaction, but her guardian isn't buying the act for a second. With a skeptical look, the woman points out that May's version of talking usually involves dragging people into shadows. Another sharp bonk punctuates the guardian's total disbelief in May's weak excuses. The woman looks down at May, demanding that she at least make her lies believable. She issues a stern warning, telling May that her current attitude will leave her without any friends. May stares back with a defiant, sharp glare, her pride refusing to buckle under the criticism. Her expression tightens as she prepares to double down on her elitist worldview. She snaps back, declaring that she has no interest in being friends with ordinary people anyway. The guardian delivers one last physical reminder to the head to check May's runaway arrogance. She sighs, reminding May that her stubborn nature is exactly why her parents had to leave her in this care. Turning to leave, the woman warns May that her selfishness will lead to lifelong regret if she doesn't change. May sits in the silence of the room, her hand resting on her face as she broods over the harsh lecture. The guardian drops one final core on her, using a threat to ensure May picks up another student this Saturday. Back at the studio, Darin stands before a closed door, her heart racing with anticipation. Fa offers a final bit of reassurance, hoping to ease Darin's intense anxiety before the meeting. Darin can't shake the dread, worried that the teacher will be unhappy with her recent performance. Fa gives her a supportive nudge, insisting that she stay positive for the critical encounter ahead. The door creaks open, and a man in a black shirt appears to greet them at the threshold. He looks down at her with a professional, unreadable expression as he calls her inside. Darin's face pales, the sheer pressure of the moment making her feel like she's walking into a storm. Darin's hands tremble, clutching her dress as she faces the crushing weight of her own self-doubt. Her gaze drops, haunted by the fear that she is destined to be a disappointment to the one person who believed in her. She remembers the early days when the teacher first extended a hand to guide her through the complex world of music. Back then, his eyes shone with a genuine warmth and encouragement that gave her a sense of purpose. But now, that same face is cold and professional, a stark contrast to the support she once felt. Every missed note feels like a sharp shard of glass, fracturing her confidence into a million pieces. She sees her own reflection trapped within these jagged fragments of anxiety and failure. The mental toll becomes physical, as if the very keys of the piano are drawing blood from her exhausted hands. Her eyes widen in a moment of pure, unadulterated terror at the thought of her collapsing dreams. She wishes she could return to the time when his praise was easy and the music felt light. Returning to reality, Darin sits before her mentor, her expression heavy with the expectation of bad news. The teacher adjusts his glasses, a somber gesture that signals a shift in their professional relationship. He gestures toward the instrument, prepared to deliver a cold, hard truth while Fa watches from the sidelines. He leans back, crossing his legs with a clinical detachment that cuts deeper than any critique. Darin remains silent, bracing herself as Fa glares at the man for his lack of empathy. He clasps his hands tightly, searching for the right words to extinguish her burning ambition. The suggestion to stop her pursuit of a professional career leaves Darin completely paralyzed. Fa erupts in fury, unable to believe that this man is giving up on Darin's hard work. The teacher maintains his professional stance, hovering over the student whose future he is currently rewriting. He admits that while she is talented compared to an average person, it simply isn't enough for the professional world. Darin listens in stunned silence, her heart sinking as Fa looks on with a mixture of concern and rage. He speaks with a clinical precision, focusing on the harsh reality of the industry, rather than her passion. Darin stares blankly ahead, the weight of his realistic advice crushing her spirit. He urges her to consider university and other paths, treating her lifelong dream as a mere youthful distraction. Fa's annoyance reaches its boiling point as she watches him dismiss Darin's dedication so easily. The teacher looks down at her, convinced that he is doing her a favor by forcing her to let go. Darin's hands tighten into fists against her knees, a silent protest against the verdict she's just received. Fa watches closely, realizing that Darin is absorbing every word of this painful rejection. She clenches her fingers together, struggling to find the strength to speak her mind. Looking him directly in the eye, Darin admits that even if it's hopeless, she isn't ready to quit. Fa softens, seeing a spark of defiance in Darin that no amount of logic can extinguish. A determined smile breaks across Darin's face as she declares she will only stop when she has truly run out of time. She pumps her fists with a newfound resolve, choosing to fail on her own terms rather than someone else's. The teacher is taken aback, his professional mask momentarily slipping at her unwavering spirit. He remains silent for a moment, processing the fact that his advice has been rejected. He bows slightly, acknowledging her determination, even though he refuses to be a part of it anymore. He stands up, making it clear that if she continues this path, he can no longer be her mentor. Darin looks down, accepting the end of their lessons with a heavy but resolute heart. They share a final, professional handshake to signal the official end of their time together. The teacher sees her off, wishing her safety but remaining firm in his decision to stop the training. As they prepare to leave, Fa decides that the teacher needs a little parting gift for his lack of faith. Darin notices Fa moving toward the piano and wonders what her ghost friend is planning. With a sudden burst of energy, Fa slams her hands down on the keys of the expensive grand piano. Darin is horrified, knowing exactly how much that instrument costs and what the teacher will think. Fa laughs with mischievous glee while the teacher panics at the sound of a piano playing itself. She continues her spectral performance, calling it a just punishment for him abandoning her friend. Darin tries to keep a straight face as the teacher looks around in absolute confusion. Fa sticks her tongue out at the man, relishing the chaos she's causing in his pristine studio. A small smile finally reaches Darin's lips as she hears the phantom notes echoing through the room. Walking away, Darin tells the terrified teacher she didn't hear a thing, leaving him to wonder if he's finally lost his mind. The sun shines over the city's park structures as the day begins to wind down. Fa sits beside a dejected Darin on a park bench, trying to convince her that switching teachers is a normal part of growth. Darin pulls her hood up, her face a mask of exhaustion as she admits that she understands the logic, but the emotions are harder to process. Fa listens intently as Darin explains that her long history with her mentor makes this professional parting feel like a personal failure. Darin dramatically compares the split to a devastating romantic breakup, much to Fa's visible annoyance. The camera focuses on their shoes as Darin insists that the pain of the separation feels exactly the same. Fa raises a finger as a mischievous idea suddenly strikes her. She leans in with a playful grin, joking that if the old teacher is the ex, then she must be the new partner in Darin's musical journey. Darin's face turns beet red as she begs Fa to stop making such ridiculous and embarrassing comparisons. The camera pans across the urban skyline as Darin considers where to find some peace before heading home. Darin admits she isn't ready to face her house yet, but she is struggling to find a destination that feels right. Looking out from the bench, she explains she needs a location that offers either comfort or a spark of inspiration. A sudden realization flashes in Darin's eyes as a specific memory comes to the surface. She sits up straight, telling Fa that there is one particular place they can visit. Darin leads the way up a long escalator, moving with a new sense of purpose. They arrive at the Block Trade Music Studio, a professional environment decorated with high-end guitars and equipment. Darin's sneakers click against the wooden floor as she steps into the lobby. She approaches the main desk where a receptionist is busy assisting other clients. The woman looks up and her face instantly lights up with a look of pure joy. She recognizes the visitor immediately, calling out Darin's name, while Fa watches the interaction with crossed arms. From a high angle, we see Darin leaning against the marble counter, claiming she was just passing through the neighborhood. The receptionist marvels at how much Darin has grown, noting that she's even taller than her now. The conversation takes a turn when the woman asks Darin about all the trophies and prizes she must have won recently. The weight of her recent failures crashes down on Darin, causing her to slump onto the counter in total despair. Fa watches from the side, witnessing Darin's emotional breakdown as the girl begins to sniffle. Feeling a bit out of place, Fa's ghost-like feet drift away from the counter to explore the rest of the academy. She wanders through the halls, passing by energetic young students who are bustling between practice rooms. Fa looks around the professional setup, wondering if she ever studied in a place like this during her own life. Her eyes narrow in thought, realizing she's curious about her past but too stubborn to ask Darin for help. As she drifts, Fa overhears a conversation between two instructors near a doorway. One of the teachers expresses a deep sense of pity for Darin, remembering her as a student who once had immense potential. A haunting silhouette of Darin appears, representing the mistakes and hesitation that started to plague her performances. Fa looks troubled by these words, seeing how the staff perceives Darin's decline. She reflects on the harsh reality that a loss of confidence can eventually eat a person alive until they lose their gift entirely. Back at the reception desk, Darin is fully sobbing, convinced that she has become a useless person who only disappoints others. The receptionist tries her best to comfort the girl while Fa returns to find her friend in a complete mess. Suddenly, a clear, rhythmic sound echoes through the lobby, catching Darin's attention. She looks over to see a young girl with bright pink hair sitting at a grand piano, playing with absolute focus. The receptionist explains that the girl's name is Melody, a young prodigy who plays to kill time while waiting for her aunt. Darin is transfixed by the sight, noting that the child possesses a level of confidence she desperately envies. Melody continues to play, her small hands moving across the keys with surprising precision. The camera focuses on the young girl's calm expression, which radiates a sense of pure musical inspiration. A close-up shows her fingers pressing the keys without a single moment of doubt. As the piece ends, Melody lets out a soft sigh, finishing her practice session. Darin and the receptionist break into enthusiastic applause, praising the girl for her incredible skill. Melody looks back at them with a blank, unimpressed stare, seemingly unaffected by the praise. From across the room, the girl bluntly states that she isn't good because her older sister always calls her terrible. Horrified by this, Darin rushes over to the piano, determined to protect the girl's self-esteem. Melody looks up in surprise at the older girl's sudden and intense outburst. Darin confesses her own deep-seated struggles, admitting that she often freezes and fails to finish a single piece in front of others. She leans in close, telling Melody to never believe anyone who says she isn't good enough, because her confidence is a rare gift. Melody stares back at Darin, clearly moved by the sincerity of the encouragement. Fa floats over to Darin's side, asking if she actually knows who this kid is. Fa puts a hand to her chin, mentioning that the girl looks strangely familiar. As Melody sits quietly at the bench, Fa realizes she looks exactly like someone they've encountered before. Suddenly, the heavy sound of a designer shoe hitting the floor echoes through the entrance. A girl wearing a black baseball cap and a stylish jacket enters, calling Melody a little brat and telling her it's time to go. Darin and Fa both react with comedic horror as they recognize the newcomer instantly. The girl in the cap looks up, her eyes widening as she realizes she's just walked right into her rival, Darin. May towers over Darin and Melody, demanding an explanation for their presence in the studio. Darin puts on a brave face, claiming she was just visiting her old study grounds while keeping a protective hand on Melody. May adjusts her cap, her eyes narrowing as she realizes this coincidence provides the perfect opportunity she's been looking for. She moves in close, her intensity catching Fa off guard as she looms over Darin with a predatory focus. The atmosphere turns icy as May stares directly into Darin's eyes, admitting she's been waiting for a chance to hear her play again. With a commanding gesture, May points toward the piano and orders Darin to perform for her right this second. Darin is left speechless by the sudden demand, realizing May isn't going to take no for an answer. Watching from the side, Fa ponders why May is harboring such a massive, long-standing grudge over a single performance. She notes the absurdity of the situation, questioning why someone with May's undisputed talent would be so fixated on a rival. May continues her verbal assault, her finger still pointed accusingly as she pushes for total compliance. Fa observes May's expression closely, beginning to suspect there's more than just anger behind that constant frown. The ghost wonders if May's aggressive exterior is actually a shield to hide a deep-seated fear of Darin's potential. Even as Fa contemplates this, she realizes how ridiculous it seems for a perfect prodigy like May to be afraid of anything. Suddenly, little Melody breaks the tension by shoving May back, refusing to let her sister continue the interrogation. Melody shouts at May to stop being a bully, delivering a stinging insult by calling her own sister a friendless loser. May is visibly shaken, her eyes widening in disbelief that her own sibling would speak to her with such defiance. Sensing the situation is spiraling out of control, Darin raises her hands to play peacemaker between the bickering sisters. May immediately retaliates by pinching Melody's cheek, furious that the little brat is finally talking back to her. Melody doesn't back down, grabbing May's jacket and insisting that she's only acting out because May is being mean. Fa finds the whole exchange hilarious, teasing Darin about her natural charm and how quickly she won over the young prodigy. The chaos continues as May keeps pulling at Melody's hair, leaving Darin and Fa to wonder how they'll handle this volatile pair. A studio staff member suddenly appears to break up the fight, informing May that the school needs to speak with her. May follows the staff member to the counter, finally giving Darin and Melody a much-needed moment of peace. Relief washes over Darin as she gives Melody an encouraging pat on the head, praising her for being so brave. The staff member explains that the school is hosting a piano showcase and wants May to perform as a special guest. May hesitates, her usual confidence wavering as she considers the invitation to perform in front of the students. A look of sudden inspiration flashes across May's face as she realizes how she can turn this event to her advantage. She agrees to the performance on the spot, but quickly adds that her participation comes with a very specific condition. May points back at Darin, declaring that she will only play if Darin joins her on stage. Darin is blindsided by the proposal, her jaw dropping as May suggests they perform a duet together. Fa leans in close to Darin's ear, advising her to accept the challenge just to get May to stop hounding her. May stands firm, her gaze locked on Darin as she waits for her to commit to the upcoming performance. Realizing there's no way out, Darin forces a smile and officially accepts the deal, much to May's satisfaction. With the matter settled, May prepares to head home, leaving the staff member delighted that the showcase is secure. May demands Darin's contact information, looming over her to ensure she doesn't try to back out of their arrangement. Melody excitedly jumps in to get Darin's number as well, her eyes sparkling with joy at the prospect of staying in touch. As she exits, May throws one last warning over her shoulder, telling Darin not to even think about running away. Darin clutches her chest in exhaustion, feeling like she's fallen into a trap rather than finding a way out. Later that night, the city falls silent as the focus shifts to Darin's quiet apartment. Darin collapses onto her bed, clutching her head as she wonders why everyone keeps piling their expectations onto her. She sobs into her pillow, feeling the weight of the world while Fa watches over her with a sympathetic expression. Fa listens as Darin vents her frustration, sick of being blamed by others whenever she fails to meet their impossible standards. With a final, agonizing scream of "I'm done," Darin lets out all of her pent-up emotions into the empty room. Just 2 minutes later, the exhaustion takes over and Darin is sound asleep, her loud snoring filling the air. Fa is stunned by the sudden change, amazed at how quickly Darin can go from a mental breakdown to a deep slumber. The ghost reaches out, her hand glowing with a soft light as she gently touches Darin's forehead. Fa reflects on her own existence, realizing that since becoming a spirit, she hasn't been able to truly sleep or dream. She looks down at Darin, wondering if it's selfish to use the girl as a bridge to experience the world again. As she continues to focus her energy, Fa decides that this connection might actually benefit both of them. She lies down beside the sleeping pianist, hoping to bridge the gap between Darin's confusion and her own curiosity. A brilliant surge of energy erupts from the point of contact, as the ghost's consciousness begins to merge with Darin's dreams. The spectral light envelops them both, signaling Fa's desperate attempt to feel the touch of another human being again. In the dreamscape, a hand reaches out and firmly grasps another, a sensation Fa hasn't felt in ages. Suddenly, they are transported to a bright city street where Fa is finally able to walk side by side with Darin. Fa's face lights up with pure, unadulterated joy as she exclaims that she's finally caught up to her friend. Darin turns around in shock, staring at the ghost who has finally managed to reach her in the realm of dreams. A firm grip suddenly latches onto Darin's wrist, grounding her in this strange, shifting reality. Fa gazes back with a triumphant, playful smirk that hints at a successful connection. Shock ripples through Darin as she stares at the girl who has no business being in her private thoughts. Confused, Darin demands to know where Fa came from and why she's suddenly manifesting here. Fa simply smiles, letting out a breath of relief as she whispers that she's finally done it. With a burst of energy, Fa raises Darin's arm high, exulting in the fact that she's finally managed to grab hold of someone. She explains the situation clearly. They are currently inside Darin's dream, and she has successfully crossed over into it. Darin remains frozen, trying to process the impossible logic of being awake inside her own sleep. Fa leans in closer, pointing out that this dream state is the only place where their physical forms can actually interact. The realization hits Darin hard, acknowledging that the rules of the living world don't apply to a ghost. Bubbling with excitement, Fa asks if they should take advantage of this opportunity and go somewhere together. Without waiting for an answer, she begins leading Darin through the dreamscape with an infectious sense of purpose. Darin quickly agrees but insists on a wardrobe change first, wanting to shed her repetitive daily look. She watches Fa walk ahead, noting that she has never seen the spirit look this genuinely happy before. A close-up reveals Darin's observant gaze as she analyzes the sheer joy radiating from her companion. Her eyes drift down to where their skin meets, focusing on the technical sensation of the contact. She recalls how Fa's touch usually feels like a shard of ice, a constant reminder of her spectral nature. Standing in the middle of the street, Darin notes how this cold sensation acts as a boundary between what's real and what's imagined. The scene shifts as a hand reaches out to browse through a rack of vibrant, stylish clothing. Fa soon debuts a fresh new look, striking a confident pose with a playful peace sign. Darin can't help but offer a sincere compliment, impressed by how well the new outfit suits her. With the fashion show over, Fa lets out a laugh and continues pulling Darin along their journey. Startled by the sudden movement, Darin asks where exactly they are headed in such a hurry. Fa looks back over her shoulder, finding the destination to be the most obvious choice in the world. They arrive at a cozy cafe where Fa dives into a slice of cake, savoring every single bite. Darin sits across from her, quietly observing the ghost's intense focus on the simple pleasure of eating. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as Fa stops mid-bite, her expression turning uncharacteristically somber. She stares down at her plate, the fork hovering over the remains of the dessert. Fa admits that while she initially came to offer support, she had her own selfish reasons as well. She confesses that being a ghost is a life of deprivation, and she craved the chance to feel, eat, and dress up again. Darin listens intently, her expression softening as she realizes the weight of Fa's eternal isolation. Fa rests her chin on her hand, apologizing for letting her excitement overshadow Darin's own feelings. A tight shot on Darin shows her deep in thought, moved by the ghost's raw honesty. She reassures Fa that it's perfectly fine, especially since she's been looking for a distraction from her own stress. Rubbing the back of her neck, Darin admits that she rarely goes out, so this experience is new for her too. The view shifts toward the window, signaling a transition as they prepare to move to their next location. A clean white sneaker steps firmly onto the lush grass of a new, serene environment. They find themselves standing under a sprawling, celestial sky that glimmers with 1,000 stars. Darin stares upward, her mouth slightly agape at the sheer scale of the dream's beauty. Fa notes that such a perfect, luminous sky could only ever exist within the realm of a dream. Looking up at the cosmos, Fa shares how much she has always loved the quiet peace of the night. A brief vision shows Fa sitting alone in the dark, a stark contrast to the brilliant light they share now. She turns back to Darin, asking if she shares this appreciation for the starlit view. Darin's eyes reflect the shimmering galaxy above, but her focus remains entirely on the girl beside her. Under the glow of the stars, Fa looks more radiant and full of life than ever before. Darin feels a flush of heat rise to her cheeks, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. Fa suddenly reaches out and takes Darin's hands, having noticed something she wants to demonstrate. She presses her palm flat against Darin's, initiating a direct comparison of their proportions. Darin's pulse quickens as she stares at the close proximity of their hands. Fa points out with a smile that Darin's hands are significantly larger than her own. She laughs at the unfairness of it, noting that no amount of training can change one's natural reach. Darin is completely captivated, unable to look away from Fa's genuine, sparkling expression. They stand together in the tall grass, two figures silhouetted against the infinite reach of the dream sky. The two palms remain pressed together, a silent study of the physical differences between them. Fa leans in slightly, her focus entirely on the technical connection they've established. Darin looks at her with wide, shimmering eyes, fully immersed in the dream's emotional weight. Fa meets her gaze with a soft, knowing smile that seems to transcend their surroundings. As their fingers begin to interlock, Darin finds herself wishing this impossible moment would never end. They say that love is the ultimate engine, a force so powerful it can drive a person to achieve the impossible. With the right motivation, even the most grueling task becomes a labor of passion, written down with absolute conviction. Sunlight spills through the bedroom curtains, marking the start of a day that feels fundamentally different. Darin bolts upright in bed, her eyes wide as she processes a surge of energy she's never felt before. She reaches out, her fingers trembling slightly as she tries to steady the frantic rhythm of her heart. Clenching her hand over her chest, she feels a sudden, sharp resolve to finally succeed. She realizes that no matter how steep the climb, she is ready to give it her all this time. A fierce determination settles into her gaze, a silent promise to prove her worth. Looking down, she finds Fa still resting, the weight of their connection grounding her in the moment. Fa looks up with a soft, radiant smile, her voice a gentle whisper as she asks if last night was enjoyable. A light blush creeps onto Darin's face as the memories of their shared dream come rushing back. With a genuine shy smile, she admits that it was an experience she'll never forget. Later, fully dressed for the day, Darin pauses at the door with a puzzled expression. She turns back to the bed, wondering why her companion hasn't made a single move to get ready. Fa leans back against the pillows, explaining with a tired sigh that their dream walking session had some lingering physical effects. She offers a playful, reassuring laugh, insisting that a bit of rest is all she needs to recover her strength. Darin isn't entirely convinced, her eyes searching for any sign that the situation might be more serious. Fa reaches out and gently pulls Darin closer, urging her to focus on her school day instead of worrying. She lightly taps Darin's cheek, a brief and innocent gesture that catches the younger girl off guard. Darin's breath hitches as she feels the distinct, icy temperature of Fa's skin against her own. She stares at her arm, mesmerized by the physical reminder of the boundary that still exists between them. Fa laughs at the reaction, teasingly asking if she's being used as a personal cooling system. Darin sets her bag down, the weight of it matching the heavy thoughts swirling in her mind. As she prepares to leave, she finds herself questioning the very nature of the feelings blooming inside her. She rubs the back of her neck, wondering if she's simply flustered because Fa is so undeniably striking. A vision of Fa's radiant, happy face flashes through her mind, making it even harder to stay focused. She hides her face in her hand, reminding herself that they've only known each other for a few short weeks. Sitting alone at her desk, she stares out at the school grounds, feeling like any deeper connection would be far too sudden. Her eyes look heavy with contemplation, realizing she has no one to turn to for advice on such personal matters. She glances over at two of her classmates, wondering if they hold the answers to her confusion. The two girls are huddled together, sharing a lighthearted moment over something on a phone screen. Darin hesitates, feeling the absence of Fa's guidance in this unfamiliar social setting. Summoning her courage, she leans forward to interrupt their conversation with a soft inquiry. The girls turn toward her with bright, welcoming smiles, curious to see what the quiet pianist wants to discuss. Darin's face turns a deep red as she struggles to find the right words to start. She shyly asks what it actually takes to know if you truly like another person. The two classmates exchange a surprised look, clearly not expecting such a deep topic from her. Their eyes light up with excitement as they immediately assume she's talking about the international student who visited her recently. Darin frantically waves her hands in the air, trying to shut down the rumor before it spreads. She realizes she's in a tight spot, unable to explain the truth without sounding completely delusional. Forced to play it off, she gives a nervous laugh and tells them it's a secret for the time being. The girls pull their chairs closer, eager to dive into a full-blown discussion about romance. Darin clasps her hands together, explaining her belief that such feelings should be based on something deep and long-lasting. Her classmates stare at her blankly, find her overly analytical approach to love quite unusual. They burst into laughter, finding Darin's tendency to overthink every little emotion incredibly endearing. The girl with glasses grins, telling Darin that sometimes it's as simple as finding someone good-looking. Her friend blushes and turns away, her silent reaction confirming her own shallow dating preferences. Darin remains quiet, absorbing the idea that love doesn't always have to be a complex puzzle. The classmate points a finger at her, giving the final advice to simply listen to what her heart is saying. Darin looks down at her desk, the simple phrase echoing in her mind as she tries to find her own answer. Her friend tells her to take it slow, just as Darin's phone begins to vibrate loudly on her lap. She pulls the device out, her expression shifting to one of surprise at the notification. She stares at the screen with a worried frown, realizing she has a conflicting appointment to manage. Her classmate leans in with a mischievous grin, asking if the mysterious international guy is messaging her again. Outside, the school day continues, while Darin remains trapped in a whirlwind of social pressure and personal doubt. Meanwhile, back at the house, Fa lets out a sudden sneeze, sensing that she is the current topic of a very intense conversation. The teacher begins the lesson by announcing the upcoming term presentations. Students immediately scramble to form groups of 3 or 4 as instructed. Darin joins her classmates, feeling a sense of relief that she's finally connecting with others. The group dives straight into the logistics of how to divide the workload. Melody quickly voices her refusal to handle the public speaking portion of the project. A small debate breaks out as the group realizes no one wants the pressure of presenting. Seeing an opportunity to grow, Darin tentatively raises her hand to get their attention. She shocks her peers by volunteering to take on the role of the presenter herself. Melody tries to talk her out of it, worried that Darin is pushing herself too hard. Darin insists she wants to change and finally build the confidence she's been lacking. Her friends exchange a knowing look, attributing this sudden bravery to her supposed crush. As the sun begins to set over the school, the day's classes finally come to an end. Later that evening, the city lights begin to flicker on around the local library. Darin rushes into the building, apologizing profusely for being late to her meeting with May. May looks up from her book, clearly unimpressed by the delay in their schedule. The two find a quiet corner among the stacks to begin their discussion. May reaches for a volume of list, her mind focused entirely on their musical goals. She explains that for their duet to succeed, they need to actually understand one another. To survive the competition, May believes they must function as a perfectly synchronized pair. Darin agrees, realizing she is the only person who truly knows May's hidden side. May leans in closer, explaining why she prefers meeting in person over digital chat. Peering through the shelves, May admits that she finds texting to be cold and impersonal. She takes a seat on the floor, arguing that face-to-face interaction is the only way to read someone's true intent. Darin finds herself captivated by May's surprisingly thoughtful perspective on communication. As May rests against the shelves, She remains completely focused on the technical discussion. A group of arrogant students suddenly interrupts, with one boy cruelly kicking May's leg. May's hand hits the floor hard as she struggles to regain her composure after the fall. A dangerous spark of fury ignites in her eyes as the bullies continue to mock her. Darin steps in immediately, shielding May and demanding that the bullies back off. The lead bully turns his aggression on Darin, mocking her for trying to play the hero. He aggressively grabs Darin's collar, ready to escalate the confrontation even further. In a blur of motion, May lunges forward and tackles the bully to the ground. She pins him down with terrifying intensity, showing no signs of backing away. May growls that she won't tolerate anyone bruising her precious hands or disrespecting them. The bully is left trembling in fear as May holds him firmly by his tie. Her aura becomes suffocatingly dark as she prepares to teach the group a final lesson. Staff members finally rush onto the scene to stop the altercation before it gets worse. Outside, the rain pours down on a nearby convenience store following the chaotic incident. Darin returns to May's side, carrying a cold compress to treat her injuries. She carefully examines May's wrist, checking for any signs of a serious sprain. Darin explains the medical necessity of using ice to reduce the immediate swelling. She gently takes May's hand, ensuring her movements are steady and professional. To keep the ice in place, Darin begins to wrap her own necktie around May's wrist as a makeshift bandage. May watches her partner, stunned by the genuine care Darin is showing her. The cold compress is secured tightly to ensure the most effective recovery for May's hands. In that moment, May realizes that Darin's kindness is unlike anything she's experienced. A memory flashes back to a previous teacher critiquing May's technical performance. The teacher had noted that while her fingering was perfect, her soul was missing from the keys. May recalls the sting of being told her playing was as stiff as a robot. The teacher warned her that without emotion, she would never succeed in the older divisions. He admitted that the one thing he couldn't teach her was how to feel the music. May was baffled when he suggested that falling in love was the only solution. He explained that a true artist must embrace the drama and romance of life. To him, the heart was the most essential tool in a musician's repertoire. He urged her to give her everything to someone else and taste true happiness. With a grin, he added that she must also experience the crushing weight of heartbreak. Only by feeling the full spectrum of emotion could she ever hope to move an audience. Looking at Darin now, May sees the very person who might finally soften her heart. The two stand near the school exit, their shoes clicking against the cold floor as they prepare to head out into the storm. May stares at Darin, her expression unreadable as she processes the protective care she just received. Darin gazes down at May's wrist, worried that the sudden injury will derail their essential piano practice sessions. A moment of hesitation flickers across Darin's face as she prepares to ask a difficult, personal question. Standing by the glass doors, Darin finally works up the courage to ask if May is actually being bullied at school. May stiffens instantly, a dark shadow crossing her features at the mere suggestion of being a victim. Outside, the rain continues to lash against the storefronts, mirroring the rising tension between the two rivals. May leans in with a sharp, intense gaze, asking if Darin truly thinks she's the type of person who gets ganged up on. She scoffs in derision, dismissing those who took cheap shots as nothing more than pathetic trash. Realizing Darin was genuinely concerned for her well-being, May sighs and decides to clarify her standing. She leans back casually, explaining that the easiest way to cover up insecurity is simply to bark louder than everyone else. Darin's face lights up with a bright, relieved smile, happy to hear that May isn't actually being mistreated. She laughs heartily, expressing her sincere admiration for how cool and confident May always appears to be. May tries to play it off by flipping her hair, but the unexpected praise clearly catches her off guard. Looking down at her own feet, Darin admits that she often feels like a loser compared to someone as impressive as May. May's eyes widen in genuine shock at Darin's sudden confession of her own deep-seated insecurities. A rare moment of quiet vulnerability passes between them as May looks directly into Darin's eyes. May confesses a surprising truth, admitting she's actually jealous of Darin's tall and imposing stature. Darin can't help but giggle, finding it ironic that her height is something a prodigy like May would ever envy. They both look out at the heavy downpour, realizing that getting home safely is going to be a major struggle. Darin sighs in frustration, worried about the flooded paths and her lack of an umbrella for the trek home. May watches her closely for a beat, her mind already working on a practical solution to their predicament. On a sudden impulse, May suggests that Darin should just wait out the storm at her house instead. She points out that it's the perfect chance to discuss their duet before calling for a ride from the station. Darin offers a shy smile, but worries that showing up unannounced might be a burden on May's family. Without a second thought, May pulls out her phone to call Melody and clear the way for their guests. Melody's voice booms through the speaker, her excitement at having a visitor nearly overwhelming May's patience. Darin watches the screen, seeing Melody's enthusiastic reaction to the news of her impending arrival. May turns back to Darin, using Melody's pure excitement as leverage to ensure she doesn't back out. Seeing no other option, Darin gives a gentle smile and formally accepts the invitation to visit. May reaches out and takes the ice pack away, noting that Darin's own hand has turned red from the intense cold. She firmly grabs Darin's arm, leading her toward the exit to finally begin their journey home. Darin is caught completely off guard by the sudden contact, her heart racing as she's led toward the door. She she follows silently behind May, watching her rival's silhouette against the bright lights of the building. Their hands remain joined as they walk, and Darin notices a surprising warmth radiating from May's palm. She briefly recalls a cold, ethereal touch from a previous night, noting how different this human connection feels. Darin's eyes reflect a deep realization that this moment is grounded in a reality she's finally starting to understand. Together, they stand at the edge of the rain, marking a significant shift in their complicated relationship. They soon arrive at a stunning, modern residence that stands tall and gray against the rainy sky. Entering the foyer, May announces their arrival while a nervous Darin follows close behind her. May's aunt greets them with a warm smile, while a thrilled melody rushes over to welcome their guests. The elder woman speaks kindly, thanking Darin for showing the patience to be friends with May. May shifts her feet in embarrassment, clearly flustered by her relative's direct and honest assessment. Seeing the weather outside, May suggests that since the rain won't stop, Darin should simply stay the night. The aunt glances up with an intrigued look, noting May's uncharacteristic eagerness to have a friend stay over. May looks away quickly, insisting it's just a matter of convenience given the worsening storm. A knowing look crosses the aunt's face as she realizes May truly values Darin's company. They move into the spacious dining area, where the family is already beginning to set the table for a meal. Darin looks slightly overwhelmed, while May stands firm in her decision to host her new friend. The aunt encourages Darin to call home immediately, ensuring her parents won't worry about the sudden change in plans. Reassured by the warm welcome, Darin lets out a joyful laugh, happy to accept the invitation. She reflects on the heartwarming fact that this will be the very first sleepover she's ever experienced. As they settle into the house, May sheds her jacket, ready to begin an evening of music and shared secrets. Darin takes charge of the conversation, pointing forward as she explains the plan for the night. On the other end of the video call, Darin's family and the ghost Fa gather around to listen to her update. She excitedly breaks the news to her mother that she will be staying over at a friend's house for the very first time. May's aunt watches the interaction from the side, maintaining a professional and observant composure. May stares at the screen quietly, feeling a strange sense of comfort knowing that Darin is just as socially isolated as she is. Darin's mother appears on the phone screen, her face full of motherly concern as she questions if this friend is actually real. The aunt leans into the frame to reassure the mother, promise to personally handle the school drop-off in the morning. Darin looks back at her with a stunned expression, surprised by how supportive the aunt is being. The mother bursts into cheerful laughter, happy to see her daughter finally making some social progress. Darin leans toward the phone, asking her mother to pan the camera around the room one more time. The camera lens sweeps across the empty living space, searching for a sign of the supernatural presence she knows is there. A look of deep longing and sadness crosses Darin's eyes when she realizes she still can't see Fa through the screen. The whole group sits together in a final moment of quiet reflection before the video call eventually ends. Outside, the heavy downpour of rain against the window creates a secluded and cozy atmosphere for the two girls. Inside the bedroom, May sits at her massive grand piano while Darin stands nearby in her pajamas. Darin blushes and smiles brightly, admitting how nervous and excited she is to be sharing a bed for a sleepover. Her eyes practically sparkle as she admires the high-quality European grand piano sitting in the middle of the room. May can't help but brag a little, gesturing toward the keys as she describes the instrument's incredibly smooth sound. Just as May prepares to play, Darin reaches out and firmly takes her hand to stop her. May freezes in place, looking down at her captured hand with a look of pure shock. Darin gently explains that they shouldn't risk aggravating May's sprained wrist before the big performance. Standing by the piano, Darin insists that taking a few days off to rest is the only professional way to handle the injury. May remains silent, her gaze softening as she processes the genuine care behind Darin's strict instructions. Darin looks at her with total sincerity, reminding May that her talent has already been proven by countless awards. She maintains a supportive grip on May's wrist, emphasizing that there's no need to overwork herself right now. May lets out a tired sigh, finally letting her competitive guard down for a moment. She admits that the pressure of being the best makes her feel like she has to work twice as hard as anyone else. As Darin pulls away, May touches her own wrist, the warmth of the interaction lingering in the quiet room. They shift their focus back to the task at hand, standing by the piano to choose a song for their duet. Darin suggests picking a piece that sounds beautiful, but won't be technically overbearing for May's wrist. May looks back, asking Darin if she has any specific musical recommendations they should consider. The two of them transition to the bed, relaxing as they prepare to browse through different scores. They lie down together, turning the bed into a makeshift office as they look over potential music on their devices. Darin pulls up a streaming app on her phone, scrolling through a list of classical compositions. She mentions her love for Debussy, suggesting they look through his repertoire for something suitable. Both girls lean in close to the screen, their eyes lighting up as they find a piece that resonates with them. Darin beams with joy as the melody of the Petite Suite begins to play from her phone. May gazes up at the ceiling, lost in thought as she listens to the flow of the music. She pulls up the digital sheet music on her tablet, carefully analyzing the difficulty of the notes. They huddle together over the tablet, confirming that the score is perfect for their current situation. Darin points out that the length is just right, meaning they won't have to spend too much time practicing. A comical argument breaks out when they try to decide who will play the lead part. Darin insists that May must take the spotlight because she is the one the audience is coming to see. May stares at her with a blank, serious expression, clearly disagreeing with Darin's selfless logic. May stands up and begins to walk toward the door, her mind already made up about the arrangement. Darin is left completely stunned when May reveals she never had any intention of being the lead. May looks back with a sharp gaze, explaining that she chose the second part specifically to watch Darin's talent shine. Standing by the doorway, she issues a stern warning for Darin not to disappoint the high expectations she has set. The room plunges into darkness as the lights are finally turned off for the night. Darin lies awake in the shadows, her heart racing from the thrill of the day's events. They lie side by side in the silence, the dim light from the window casting long shadows across the bed. May breaks the silence by complaining that the night is a boring and useless part of the day. She explains her cynical view that sleep is just a waste of time that drains your energy for the next day. Darin turns her head to look at May, listening intently to her friend's troubled perspective. May continues her monologue, stating that dreams are nothing more than a cruel lie because they aren't real. They lock eyes in the darkness, a heavy sense of vulnerability and sadness filling the space between them. Darin processes the depth of May's loneliness, realizing how much her friend struggles to find joy in reality. A close-up of Darin's eye shows her overwhelming empathy as she considers May's words. May stares upward with a melancholic expression, her face illuminated by the faint moonlight. Darin offers a warm, comforting smile, trying to dispel the heavy mood with her presence. A shimmering, ethereal vision of Fa appears in Darin's mind, serving as a reminder of their shared history. Suddenly, the door flies open as little Melody bursts into the room carrying her teddy bear. The young girl wastes no time climbing into the middle of the bed to join the older girls. May shouts at her sister to go away, her cool and serious persona instantly replaced by sibling frustration. Darin can't help but laugh at the chaotic and adorable scene, her heavy thoughts finally clearing. The three of them settle in together under the covers, the room finally feeling like a true home. Outside, the house sits in quiet peace as the storm finally begins to move on. Back in the music room, invisible hands begin to ghost across the piano keys in the dark. Fa stands in the shadows with a cold, piercing gaze, whispering a single, haunting word: liar. The morning sun filters through the blinds, signaling the start of a new day. Darin slowly stirs from her slumber, still tucked under the covers alongside Melody and May. Rubbing the sleep from her eyes, she lets out a wide yawn and realizes the morning has arrived. May sits up on the edge of the bed, urging Darin to get moving and prepare for school. Darin gazes at May, struck by a sudden realization of the stark differences between her two companions. May notices the lingering stare and asks what could possibly be so fascinating. Looking deep into May's eyes, Darin sees a beauty that rivals the stars themselves. As May stands bathed in the morning light, she looks absolutely radiant, glowing like the sun. Outside, the sound of a car door handle clicking shut signals that it's time to depart. May's mother prepares to drive the group, planning to drop Darin off at her school first. Inside the car, Melody scoots closer to Darin, much to May's visible annoyance. May watches through the rearview mirror, her eyes narrowing at the sight of them sitting so close. Melody looks back innocently, questioning why she isn't allowed to sit wherever she wants. The car ride becomes a chaotic scene of sibling bickering as May playfully scolds the younger girl. Their mother tries to maintain order behind the wheel, her expression shifting to one of mild exasperation. Finally, they settle down into their respective seats as the vehicle cruises down the road. May laughs off the embarrassment, apologizing to Darin for her sister's energetic behavior. The car comes to a halt, and Darin steps out onto the pavement to head toward her campus. She offers a bright smile and a final thank you to May's mother for the hospitality. As Darin walks away, May's mother reminds her daughter to move to the front seat for the rest of the trip. May stands by the car for a moment, her eyes fixed on Darin's retreating back. Darin continues walking toward the school entrance, unaware of the observation. A determined look crosses May's face as she decides she has one more thing to say. She reaches out, her hand nearly brushing against Darin to get her attention. Suddenly, May leans in close to Darin's ear, catching her completely off guard. She scolds Darin for slouching, telling her that hunching her shoulders won't make her seem shorter. May's intense gaze softens slightly as she gives this final piece of advice on posture. With a firm pat on the back, May tells her to stand tall before finally turning to leave. Darin stands there flustered, adjusting her collar while trying to process the sudden interaction. Suddenly, a hand reaches out and grabs Darin's shoulder from behind. Her school friends appear instantly, teasing her about the pretty girl who just dropped her off. They lean in close, eager for gossip and suspecting that Darin's study session was something more. Darin's face turns bright red as her friends continue to poke fun at her sudden blush. She desperately tries to wave off their misunderstandings as they playfully crowd around her. From inside the car, May watches the scene with a sharp, piercing stare, her mood souring. Later that day, the warm glow of sunset washes over Darin's home as she finally returns. Stepping through the front door, she announces her arrival to her mother. Her mother asks about the sleepover, but Darin quickly brushes past her to head upstairs. Left alone in the kitchen, her mother crosses her arms, baffled by her daughter's sudden rush. Darin reaches the door to her room, her expression turning serious as she prepares to face what's inside. She closes her eyes for a moment, bracing herself for the conversation she knows is coming. The ghost of Fa stands waiting, her voice cold and cutting as she calls Darin a liar. Fa's head is bowed, her shadow looming as she recounts how Darin promised to come home early. Her fingers hover over the piano keys, the tension in the room becoming suffocating. She claims that everything Darin said was a falsehood, feeling abandoned and forgotten. Darin's heart sinks as she sees the genuine hurt reflected in the ghost's eyes. Fa continues her bitter monologue, suggesting that as a mere ghost, she shouldn't even matter. She looks up at Darin, her expression a mix of resentment and deep-seated loneliness. Stuttering, Darin tries to find the words to explain that she never meant to make Fa feel unimportant. Fa remains seated at the piano, skeptical of any excuses Darin might offer. Her voice rises with emotion as she asks why she was left waiting for so long if she truly mattered. Darin stands paralyzed by the weight of the situation, unsure of how to mend their fractured bond. Fa's gaze remains cold and distant, the silence between them growing heavier by the second. Darin realizes with a sinking feeling that they are on the verge of a major confrontation. Darin looks down, her eyes clouded with a deep sense of inadequacy. She tightly clenches her fist against her skirt, struggling with the weight of her own perceived uselessness. Fa watches her from the bed, her expression hardening as she senses the shift in the room's atmosphere. Darin stands frozen, the silence of the room amplifying her internal struggle to hold it all together. Tears finally spill over, a physical manifestation of her fear of losing the people who have supported her. Fa's jaw drops in genuine shock, her playful malice instantly replaced by sheer panic at the sight of Darin's tears. Darin covers her face with her hand, sobbing out a heartbreaking apology for being a burden. Fa flails her arms frantically, desperate to stop the emotional downpour she unintentionally triggered. Wide-eyed and pale, Fa realizes that her little tease has gone way too far this time. Darin remains hunched over, her shoulders shaking as the guilt of the past few days pours out of her. Moving closer, Fa pleads with her to stop, her voice now filled with a desperate need to make things right. Fa pulls out a patterned handkerchief, offering it as a small peace offering to the distraught girl. She sits beside Darin, leaning in close to offer quiet comfort as the crying slowly begins to subside. Darin dabs at her eyes, her only concern being whether Fa still harbors any resentment toward her. Fa stares at her in disbelief, struck by just how fragile and sensitive Darin's heart truly is. The two sit quietly on the edge of the bed, the tension finally beginning to drain from the room. Darin looks up with wide, hopeful eyes as Fa admits she wasn't actually angry in the first place. Fa explains that she was right there by Darin's side during the phone call with her mother, watching everything. A flashback shows Fa making silly faces and trying to get Darin's attention through the camera lens. Her gaze softens as she recalls the frustration of being invisible, even when standing right in front of someone. Standing behind Darin in the memory, Fa represents a silent, unseen guardian who never truly left. Hearing the truth brings a radiant, relieved smile back to Darin's face. They settle into a comfortable proximity, the bond between ghost and pianist restored to its usual warmth. Fa closes one eye thoughtfully, reflecting on the strange realization that she is actually able to sleep again. She sprawls out on the bed, basking in the sunlight and explaining the mechanics of her ghostly rest. Suddenly, Fa leans in with a sharp look, demanding to know the details of the unexpected sleepover at May's house. Darin stammers and gestures wildly, trying to frame the event as a strictly professional rehearsal session. Fa leans in close, her eyes narrowing as she detects the obvious signs of a secret being kept. The interrogation is cut short by the sharp ring of a smartphone vibrating on the bed. Darin picks up the device to see May's name flashing on the screen, prompting a panicked reaction from Fa. May appears on the video call, looking relaxed and focused as she prepares to discuss their next steps. Fa crowds into the frame, glaring at the screen and questioning May's choice of casual attire. Darin explains that she can't practice this weekend, which immediately sets Fa on edge in anticipation of a fight. Fa grumbles under her breath, annoyed by May's naturally assertive and demanding personality. However, Darin stands her ground, explaining that this school presentation is a vital personal milestone. On the other side of the line, May listens intently, her expression unreadable as she processes the refusal. May's gaze drops for a moment, the silence on the call stretching out as she considers Darin's words. Darin winces in preparation for a lecture, while Fa looks ready to jump in and defend her. Darin's eyes widen in surprise when May's response turns out to be unexpectedly supportive. May offers a rare, encouraging smile, promising to cheer Darin on instead of pressuring her to practice. Stunned by the kindness, Darin can only manage a flustered response as her face flushes a deep red. The call ends, leaving the room quiet once more as the screen fades to black. Fa points at the phone in total disbelief, shocked that the normally stubborn May actually back down. Darin stares off into the distance, her heart racing from the unexpected vote of confidence. As they sit back on the bed, Fa asks for more details about this mysterious presentation. Fa immediately suspects foul play, wondering if Darin's classmates are bullying her into doing the hard work. Darin looks down down modestly, revealing that the decision to present was entirely her own. She explains that she chose this challenge as a way to confront her crippling stage fright head-on. Determination shines in her eyes as she speaks about her desire to improve and grow stronger. Darin admits she wants to succeed, so that all the time Fa spent training her won't feel like a waste. Fa is momentarily speechless, deeply moved by Darin's selfless motivation. She looks at Darin with a new level of respect, seeing the hidden strength within the shy pianist. A small, proud smile plays on Fa's lips as she realizes Darin is far more capable than she gave her credit for. Fa leans in close with a mischievous grin, declaring that she's going to provide her own special brand of help. Darin is caught off guard by the sudden proximity, her face turning bright red as she asks for clarification. Fa reaches up to adjust her hair, signaling a transformation into a more polished, supportive presence. With a confident wink and a stylish new look, Fa prepares to stand by Darin's side for the big day. Fa waits expectantly for a reaction to her new look. She playfully twirls her school uniform, asking if the outfit looks ridiculous on her. Darin sincerely compliments the look, noting how well the uniform actually suits her. Without wasting a second, they transition into a rigorous practice session right there in the empty classroom. Darin expresses her deep anxiety about the massive crowd she'll have to face on the actual day. To help her visualize, Fa creates comical imaginary versions of their classmates sitting in the front row. She even adds a grumpy-looking Mei to the front of the imaginary audience to heighten the pressure. Darin is taken aback by Fa's blunt and somewhat heartless portrayal of their peers. Fa dismisses the complaints, adjusting her glasses as she demands they focus strictly on the rehearsal. Resigned to the intense training, Darin takes a deep breath and prepares to begin. The practice is brutal, with Darin nervously clutching her script while trying to maintain eye contact. Fa claps her hands, warning Darin not to talk too fast or she'll lose the audience. Suddenly, Darin freezes mid-sentence, hiding her face behind the papers in embarrassment. She admits to biting her tongue, but Fa shows no mercy and orders her to keep going until she's fully awake. The scene shifts to the quiet morning light filtering through the bedroom curtains. Darin wakes up, still feeling the exhaustion from the previous night's marathon practice. Fa teases her about the intensity of the session, leaning in to check on her students' progress. She brags that her harsh methods are exactly why she became such a world-class talent herself. Looking up from the pillow, Darin wonders if this level of pressure will eventually break her motivation. She stares off for a moment, contemplating the sheer weight of the task ahead. Suddenly, Darin bolts upright, her eyes wide with a newfound sense of urgency. Fa watches her closely, observing the mental shift happening within her protégé. With a determined grin, Darin vows to give this presentation everything she's got. Seeing that spark of fighting spirit, Fa can't help but feel satisfied with her students' resolve. However, the reprieve is short-lived as Fa declares that the training won't stop until the very last second. Over the next few days, Darin practices her speech during every possible break with her supportive friends. Her classmates give her a double thumbs up, noticing the gradual improvement in her delivery. Even while apart, Darin keeps in constant contact via text to share her progress and anxieties. On her way to school, Mei checks the messages, silently monitoring Darin's growth from a distance. The big moment finally arrives as Darin stands at the front of the classroom, facing the entire group. Her friends cheer her on from the side, urging her to take the lead and start the presentation. Seeing Darin's pale face, a spectral Fa appears right beside her to offer immediate technical support. Darin's eyes narrow as she realizes the atmosphere of the real room is far more crushing than a rehearsal. The familiar weight of stage fright returns, making her feel as though hundreds of judgmental eyes are boring into her. Her hands tremble, crinkling the script as she realizes the stakes aren't just for her, but for her teammates too. Her partners look back with bright, expectant smiles, completely unaware of the internal battle she's fighting. For a split second, Darin regrets even volunteering for such a high-pressure role. Sensing the spiral, Fa stares intensely at Darin, preparing to snap her back into focus. She gives Darin a sharp pinch on the hand, providing a physical jolt to break the trance of fear. Fa reminds her that backing out now would waste every hour of hard work they've put in. She leans in close, coaching Darin to treat the audience like inanimate objects and focus only on her mentor. Fa's eyes lock onto Darin's, commanding her total and absolute attention to block out the room. Darin looks back, finding a steady anchor in the gaze of the person who trained her. She feels a hand gently guiding her face, a silent instruction to stay centered. Fa holds Darin's face steady, acting as a shield against the sea of faces in the classroom. The encouragement works, as Darin begins to feel a surge of confidence replacing her panic. With an inviting gesture, Fa signals that it's finally time to begin the report. Taking a final look at her notes, Darin feels as though her courage has doubled in an instant. She opens her mouth and projects a loud, clear introduction that commands the room's attention. Fa beams with pride, praising the elegant and strong start of the presentation. Even when a small wave of doubt hits her mid-speech, Darin refuses to let it stop her momentum. She feels a reassuring touch on her shoulder, a reminder to keep her pace gaze steady. Fa stays right by her side, acting as a pillar of strength whenever Darin's voice wavers. The mentor flashes a confident smile, encouraging her student to keep her eyes fixed forward. A genuine smile finally breaks across Darin's face as she realizes she is actually succeeding. Her teammates whisper in surprise, impressed that Darin is performing far better than anyone expected. Fa continues to cheer her on with theatrical gestures, celebrating every successful sentence. The insecurity that once clouded Darin's mind begins to fade away like a distant shadow. Fa claps enthusiastically, acknowledging the incredible progress her student has made. In that moment, the boundary between the classroom and their private practice sessions seems to vanish. Darin looks at her mentor with profound gratitude, realizing how much this support means to her. Fa gives one last encouraging look, knowing the hard part is over. With a final, clear breath, Darin prepares to deliver the closing remarks of her speech. She finishes with a bright, triumphant smile, having conquered her fear through the bond of mentorship. The school day ends with the building bathed in a warm, triumphant glow after the successful presentation. Walking down the pavement, Darin modestly credits her friend's support for her sudden burst of courage. Her classmates are so impressed they suggest making her the permanent presenter, leaving her bashfully promising to work even harder. Ginger beams with pride, reminding Darin that she's always had this hidden potential within her. Darin's expression softens as she begins to realize the true motivation behind her recent transformation. Namsai asks for clarification, curious about the sudden shift in Darin's personality. The group stops in their tracks as they begin to speculate on what or who is driving this change. Ginger teases that it must be the legendary power of love that gave Darin such a confidence boost. While the others joke about it, Darin remains silent, her mind clearly elsewhere. Nearby, a shocked Fa listens in, her eyes wide with sudden realization and disbelief. An image of the pretty international kid flashes across Fa's mind, feeling a surge of unexpected jealousy. Fa confronts Darin in her thoughts, feeling betrayed that her mentorship might have been used to impress a rival. The friends continue their light-hearted banter, completely unaware of the spectral tension brewing right beside them. Darin looks down, her heart racing as she weighs her friend's words against her own feelings. As they walk away, the distance between Darin and her ghostly mentor seems to grow emotionally. Darin wonders if a direct confession would only lead to rejection or hatred. Namsai advises that if she wants to win someone over, she needs to look and act her best. However, another friend disagrees, suggesting that sincerity is more important than appearance. The advice is clear: don't wait too long, or she'll be stuck in the friend zone forever. Fa glares at Darin, her expression darkening as she feels more like an outcast than a partner. She considers Darin a traitor friend for supposedly hiding her true intentions all this time. Resolved to clear the air, Darin decides she will tell the truth directly and without hesitation. The sun sets over the school, signaling the end of an era and the start of a difficult conversation. That night, Darin lies awake in the dark, her mind heavy with the weight of her upcoming confession. She drifts into the dream world, seeking out the one person she needs to talk to most. Fa is immediately defensive, refusing to engage and accusing Darin of being untrustworthy. Darin is stunned by the accusation, her eyes wide as she realizes how deeply she has hurt her mentor. Fa turns away, her spectral form glowing with a cold, hurt light as she recounts the perceived betrayal. The ghost's words cut deep, accusing Darin of using their training sessions as a mere tool for her own goals. Frustrated by the misunderstanding, Darin reaches out to stop Fa, demanding that she listen to the truth. Fa is taken aback by Darin's sudden assertiveness in the dream space. Darin looks her mentor in the eye, her voice trembling but firm as she tries to explain herself. For a moment, the two are locked in a tense, silent standoff in the blue-hued room. Fa finally yields, telling Darin to say whatever it is she has to say. Darin asks if they can move their conversation to a more comfortable setting within the dream. The scene shifts as the dream architecture reshapes itself to suit Darin's request. Darin opens her eyes to find herself in a familiar environment, ready to be honest. They find themselves sitting side by side in a dream version of Darin's bedroom, the atmosphere thick with tension. Fa crosses her arms, remaining skeptical and waiting for an explanation that makes sense. Darin offers a small, nervous smile, hoping she can bridge the gap between them. She admits that she didn't expect Fa to be this upset over a simple misunderstanding. The pianist touches her ear nervously, realizing that her plans for a smooth explanation are falling apart. She asks Fa to simply sit and listen properly so there are no more secrets between them. In a gesture of trust, their hands meet, creating a solid connection in the shifting dreamscape. Fa finally settles down, giving Darin her full, albeit wary attention. Darin explains that the rumors her friends were spreading were completely false from the start. Fa reacts with confusion, wondering why the situation is being framed as a mistake. As Fa tries to pull away, Darin holds on tighter, insisting that the story isn't over yet. She admits that Ginger was right about one thing: she needs to confess before it's too late. Fa's frustration boils over as she tells Darin to just go and find this mystery person. Darin looks up with intense resolve, realizing that her mentor still hasn't connected the dots. Their fingers interlace, a symbolic anchor for the heavy words about to be spoken. Fa freezes, her eyes wide as she senses the shift in the emotional gravity of the room. Darin's gaze is unwavering, filled with the sincerity of someone who has finally found their courage. She clarifies that her heart isn't set on Mei or anyone else the others might have imagined. Standing close, Darin finally reveals that the person who truly changed her is standing right in front of her. The weight of the moment hangs in the air, Darin's eyes shimmering with honesty. In a final, breathtaking admission, Darin confirms that her admiration and affection are for Fa alone. Darin finally lets the truth out, declaring her feelings for her mentor with absolute certainty. She leans in, desperately searching Fa's face for any hint of how she feels in return. The sudden confession leaves Fa completely speechless as she stares back in disbelief. Darin interlocks their fingers, creating a physical tether to the gravity of her words. Fa's eyes widen, the realization of Darin's sincerity finally beginning to sink in. They sit together in the quiet room, the weight of a spectral existence hanging heavy between them. Despite her bold stance, Fa notices that Darin's hands are visibly trembling with nerves. Darin presses for an answer, her voice shaking just as much as her touch. Fa looks away, reflecting on all the subtle signs of affection she managed to overlook until now. She captures Darin's gaze, seeing a spark of determination that she hadn't recognized before. Fa's expression remains hidden behind her hair as she grapples with her own oblivious nature. A small, sad smile begins to tug at the corners of Fa's mouth. She realizes she's happy to be cared for, even if the circumstances are complicated. Fa looks back at her student, her heart torn between joy and a painful reality. She decides to test Darin's resolve, asking exactly how serious she is about loving a ghost. Darin is taken aback by the question but doesn't hesitate to reaffirm her commitment. Fa turns away, warning that Darin is only seeing her as she appears in this dreamlike state. She prepares to reveal a harsh truth that she's been running from since the very beginning. Fa asks if Darin could still love her if she returned to her body only to be permanently disabled. The grim prospect of such a future leaves Darin frozen in shock. Fa paints a dark picture of a life where she might only be able to move her head, requiring constant care. She demands that Darin think about the practical limits of a life spent supporting someone with those needs. The weight of Fa's trauma is laid bare, leaving the room thick with tension. Fa urges Darin not to throw away her bright future on someone who might never walk again. A sharp glint appears in Darin's eyes as she processes the challenge presented to her. She slowly pulls her hands away, causing Fa to believe she's finally backing down. Fa tries to play it off, telling Darin it's for the best that she doesn't waste her time. She offers a hollow smile, suggesting they just pretend this whole conversation never happened. Darin clutches her chest, her expression shifting from shock to a strange new resolve. Fa's jaw drops when Darin suddenly announces her plan to start an intense workout routine. Darin lets out a soft chuckle, finding an odd sense of clarity in the chaos. Fa is completely baffled, demanding to know what exercise has to do with her potential disability. Darin explains that if Fa can't move, she'll simply build the strength to carry her everywhere herself. Fa is overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity and devotion behind such a bold claim. She argues that talk is cheap, and that most people would run when life gets difficult. Darin grips the bed sheets, ready to prove that her words aren't just empty promises. In a sudden burst of energy, Darin scoops her mentor up into a solid bridal carry. Fa freezes, paralyzed by the unexpected physical demonstration of Darin's will. Darin grits her teeth, determined to show that she can handle the physical weight of their future. She beams with pride, momentarily feeling like she has the situation under control. The triumph is short-lived as her balance fails and they both start to tumble backward. They hit the floor with a loud, ungraceful thud that echoes through the room. Fa scolds her for being an idiot while Darin just laughs at their clumsy situation. Darin teases that she'll just have to be more careful next time to avoid any further accidents. Her playful expression softens back into a look of deep, unmistakable affection. Reaching out, Darin takes Fa's hand again to bring the focus back to her promise. She vows that from this point on, every single note she plays on the piano will be a tribute to Fa. Darin's gaze is laser-focused, leaving no room for doubt about her sincerity. Fa's eyes sparkle as she listens to her student dedicate her entire musical career to her. Still hesitant, Fa points out that Darin hasn't even mastered a full song properly yet. Darin lies back, looking at Fa with a calm, unwavering confidence. She proposes a deal. If she can perform perfectly without stopping, Fa has to believe her feelings are real. The two of them share a quiet moment, the air thick with unspoken promises. Darin's eyes burn with a passion that transcends her role as a simple student. Fa is visibly moved, her defenses finally starting to crumble under the pressure of Darin's love. She looks down at their joined hands, silent as she processes the chance Darin is asking for. Fa gently takes Darin's hand, the weight of their future hanging in the air. She offers a final deal. If Darin can truly prove her skill, she'll be given a real chance. Startled by the sudden shift, Darin nearly jumps back in disbelief. A wide, hopeful grin spreads across Darin's face as she confirms if Fa is actually serious. Fa hides a secret smirk, already formulating a plan to keep the young pianist at a distance. She argues that any success Darin has found so far only happened because of her spectral guidance. Darin looks away, realizing she needs to find a way to stand on her own 2 feet. Determined to break the cycle, Darin reaches out to reclaim her independence. She pulls Fa closer, her her face lighting up with a vow to succeed using only her own strength. Fa is left momentarily breathless, stunned by the sheer intensity of Darin's resolve. As the scene fades behind the bedroom curtains, Fa agrees to watch and see what Darin can truly achieve. Sometime later, May checks her phone, finalizing plans for a high-stakes practice session. She walks with purpose, her mind focused entirely on the musical challenge ahead. Meeting with Mind at a quiet patio, May prepares to ask for some unconventional advice. With a dramatic gesture, May asks how she can make someone become even more captivated by her. Mind stares back with a look of pure, unadulterated skepticism. She immediately calls May out on her obvious interest in Darin, causing May to blush and stutter a denial. May tries to play it cool, claiming that having more people like her is simply a professional advantage. Mind takes a slow drag of her cigarette, seeing right through May's thin veil of innocence. She taps the ash away, deciding it's time to be brutally honest with her friend. Mind nonchalantly claims she doesn't know how to make people like her, since everyone is naturally drawn to her anyway. She scoffs at May's pride, reminding her of past failures where her charms didn't work. Seeing May's frustration, Mind decides to share one of her special secrets for gaining an edge. She raises a finger, emphasizing that beginners like May and Darin need a more technical approach to presence. Mind suggests a specific fashion strategy, choosing to show a bit of shoulder to ensure all eyes stay on the performer. She watches the embers of her cigarette, confident in her manipulative expertise. May is absolutely repulsed by the suggestion, calling the idea of using fashion as a distraction gross. Despite the bickering, Mind eventually drives the group to her house for the rehearsal. She gives Darin a supportive thumbs up, encouraging her to practice hard and stay as long as she needs. May remains silent in the back, adjusting her jacket while Fa watches her with a suspicious gaze. They enter the modern home, the sleek lines of the staircase reflecting the cold tension in the air. Mind leads the way, pointing out the bedroom where the piano is located. As they head upstairs, May begins to adjust her jacket, seemingly reconsidering Mind's earlier fashion advice. Mind catches her in the act, stopping her with a stern, warning look. She reminds May that forcing a connection on someone is never the right way to handle things. Inside the room, Darin and Fa are floored by the sight of a massive, professional grand piano. May steps into the room, her expression hardening as she prepares to take charge of the session. She reveals her casual training outfit, having adjusted her top to create a more imposing presence. Darin's heart begins to race, feeling the overwhelming pressure of the intense atmosphere May is projecting. May wastes no time, sternly directing Darin to take her seat at the keys. She leans in close to ensure Darin is focused, her professional demeanor bordering on aggressive. Fa watches from the sidelines, sensing that this is becoming much more than a standard piano lesson. The two pianists lock eyes, the air thick with a competitive and professional spark. However, the moment Darin's fingers hit the keys, she fumbles a difficult chord. Darin winces as the mistake echoes through the room, her confidence crumbling instantly. May stands over her, looking down with a cold, disappointed glare at the pathetic display. Her patience snaps, and she suddenly grabs Darin's collar, pulling her upward. May demands to know if Darin is intentionally playing poorly just to pick a fight. Her face is a mask of fury as she scolds Darin for the lack of progress. Darin is paralyzed with fear, staring up at the woman she once considered a mentor. Fa looks on in horror, unable to intervene as the professional session turns into a heated confrontation. May accuses Darin of treating the entire pact like a joke and embarrassing them both. She lets go of the fabric, her disappointment turning into a bitter, cold silence. Darin finally snaps, screaming that she never asked for these impossible expectations to be shoved onto her. May is visibly shaken, the force of Darin's outburst catching her completely off guard. Darin's hand trembles as she releases the last of her pent-up frustration. Calling May annoying, Darin turns her back and storms out of the room. Left alone with the ghost, Darin begins to regret her temper, while Fa fumes over May's arrogance. May remains rooted to the spot, her shadow stretching across the floor as she processes the fallout. She stands by the door, the weight of her harsh words finally starting to sink in. Fa doesn't hold back, appearing before May to call her a high and mighty brat for her behavior. She continues her verbal assault, telling May that she isn't nearly as special as she thinks she is. Fa screams that May's skills aren't even that much better than Darin's, her rage boiling over. Suddenly, the world goes still as May looks directly into Fa's eyes, leaving the ghost wondering if she has finally been seen. Fa stares off into the distance, lost in thought about the nature of her existence as a spirit. She remains a silent observer as the girls prepare for the night, pondering why her presence is so selective. Fa wonders if there is a specific requirement or a hidden bond that allows only one person to perceive a ghost. She reaches out, her hand shimmering with ethereal light as she considers if her piano music was the original key. Her gaze remains sharp, dissecting the possibilities of why she is tethered to this specific world. She stands beside May, testing the boundaries of their physical and spiritual proximity to see if any reaction occurs. Fa's eyes widen in a moment of sheer shock, questioning if a breakthrough in perception just happened. She questions if there is a past connection she has forgotten that links her to this rival. May remains stoic, her expression unreadable as she stands near the door in the dim light. Fa lets out a frustrated sigh, her mouth agape at the confusing and silent situation. May turns away, clearly agitated by the awkward tension lingering in the air after the earlier fight. The weight of her own harsh actions begins to set in, and May rubs her forehead in sheer frustration. She glances back at the empty space, feeling a lingering sense of unease she cannot quite place. Fa suddenly laughs in relief, realizing her secret identity as a spirit is still safe from the public. She dismisses her worries with a wave of her hand, confident that she was just overthinking the interaction. May pauses at the top of the stairs, her intuition telling her something is still very off in the room. She looks down the hallway, watching the shadows play tricks on her vision. Rubbing her eyes, she tries to clear the mental fog after an exhausting and emotional day. She stares at the empty table, certain that a strange glimmer just caught her eye for a split second. May continues on her way, her footsteps echoing softly against the wooden floor of the hallway. Back in the room, Darin sits on the floor, completely overwhelmed by the day's intense drama. She reaches for her sheet music, her hands trembling with a sudden surge of self-doubt. Darin stares down at the notes, her heart heavy with regret over her outburst during rehearsal. She clenches her fists and closes her eyes tight, consumed by feelings of professional inadequacy. Fa isn't having any of it, hovering over Darin and demanding she show some backbone for once. Darin looks up, startled by the intensity of her spectral mentor's sudden lecture. Fa shouts for Darin to stop being a doormat and finally stand her ground against others. She takes Darin's face in her hands, forcing the girl to acknowledge her own worth as a musician. Fa pulls her close, insisting that Darin must never let herself be pushed around by anyone again. A sudden noise at the door interrupts the intense moment, catching both of them off guard. They both freeze as the door begins to swing open, revealing a familiar silhouette in the doorway. May enters the room carrying a tray of snacks, her previous hostility replaced by a quiet, professional reservation. She looks at Darin with a softened gaze, the sharp edges of her personality momentarily dulled for the sake of peace. Before Darin can utter an apology, May shoves a donut into her mouth to silence her immediately. Fa watches the scene unfold, her expression a mix of confusion and annoyance at the sudden turn of events. May holds up a hand, taking full responsibility for the tension that had flared between them earlier. Darin sits there stunned, the sweet snack still gripped between her teeth as she listens. May sinks to the floor, offering a sincere apology for her earlier behavior during the session. She admits that she was the one who truly messed up the professional atmosphere during practice. A flashback reveals May seeking advice from Mind, who listens to her complaints with a bored expression. Mind points out that May's abrasive attitude is the root of all her social problems. Back in the present, May clenches her jaw, determined to follow through with this difficult reconciliation. Mind's advice echoes in her head as she tries to navigate these unfamiliar and vulnerable emotional waters. The fridge is shown stocked with treats, the simple solution suggested to mend a broken bridge. May promises to do better, her voice trembling slightly with the effort of being honest. Her eyes shimmer with a rare sincerity as she commits to maintaining a new professional standard. She reaches out to Darin, her gaze intense as she asks for a fresh start for their partnership. Darin is left speechless, her face flushing as she processes the unexpected olive branch from her rival. Fa stands in the background, observing the deep connection forming between the two girls. She notices a specific look in May's eyes, one that mirrors a deep, hidden sense of care. The realization of their growing bond hits Fa hard, making her clutch her chest in surprise. The tension finally breaks as the two girls share a lighthearted moment over the plate of snacks. Fa tells herself that this development is exactly what she wanted for Darin's future independence. A small smile plays on her lips as she imagines a life where she is no longer needed. She grips her shirt tight, her knuckles turning white as she tries to suppress her rising emotions. Even as she watches them laugh together, a strange sense of isolation begins to gnaw at her spirit. Fa watches from the sidelines, biting her lip as she witnesses a change she never expected. At the piano, Darin and Mai sit side by side, their former rivalry replaced by a shared musical goal. The rhythm breaks suddenly as May's fingers slip, sending a discordant note echoing through the room. Panicked, May immediately waves her hands in a frantic apology, terrified of ruining the flow. Darin remains perfectly still, her gaze fixed on her partner with an unreadable expression. Instead of a lecture, Darin simply offers a calm reassurance, suggesting they take it from the top of that section. May's tension melts away instantly, surprised by the grace she's being shown. Standing in the shadows, Fa watches in silence, her bare feet rooted to the floor as she observes this new dynamic. Darin turns back to the keys, her posture radiating a newfound sense of leadership and focus. May points out a technical snag in the composition, eager to refine their performance until it's flawless. With a bright and determined smile, Darin agrees, ready to tackle the challenge head-on. The red-haired pianist looks more alive than ever, her confidence blooming with every practice bar. Even May can't help but look at her with a soft sense of respect, acknowledging how far they've come. But for Fa, the sight is bittersweet as she feels herself becoming a ghost in more ways than one. She is haunted by her own reflection, caught between the person she was and the lies she's currently living. Guilt wells up in her eyes as she realizes she might be the one holding Darin back from true sincerity. From the back of the room, she looks like a stranger watching two friends build a future she can't be part of. The morning sun hits the pavement as the duo finally prepares to head out for the big event. As they walk, Darin admits she hasn't told her mother about the show yet, wanting to keep the moment private. Fa stays close to her side, checking in to see if the pre-show jitters are starting to kick in. Their footsteps sync up on the concrete, the weight of the upcoming performance hanging in the air. Darin's expression shifts into something more serious, her eyes darkening with a hidden intensity. Fa stops dead in her tracks when Darin reveals that the stakes for this performance are higher than just music. Touching her hair nervously, Darin explains that she wants to prove just how sincere her efforts really are. She looks Fa directly in the eye, making it clear that this performance is dedicated entirely to her. The revelation leaves Fa stunned, her face heating up as the weight of Darin's words sinks in. Flustered, Fa tells her to stop being so dramatic and just start walking toward the venue. Across town, May waits at a quiet cafe, sipping her drink while she gathers her thoughts. She's joined by little Melody, the two of them sharing a quiet moment of preparation over snacks. May's eyes sharpen as she spots a familiar figure approaching their table from across the room. She signals to Melody as Darin finally arrives, looking ready to face the music. Melody leaps up to greet Darin with a hug, while Fa watches the display with a hint of lingering jealousy. May taps the table firmly, signaling that the pleasantries are over and it's time to move. As they head out, Darin confirms she has the special performance outfit packed and ready in her bag. Fa trails behind, grumbling to herself about how domestic the three of them look together. From behind, they look like a perfectly coordinated team, walking toward their shared destiny. They arrive at the venue, where a bright sign officially welcomes them to the talent show. Inside the bustling hall, a staff member greets the group, checking their readiness for the high-pressure event. May watches as the younger students are ushered toward the stage, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Darin clutches her backpack, announcing she needs to head to the dressing room to change. The hallway is a blur of motion as performers and staff scramble to get everything into position. Before she disappears, Darin turns back to Fa, her expression softening for a final word. Fa is caught off guard when Darin tells her she doesn't need her help backstage this time. Darin explains that she wants Fa to experience the performance from the audience's perspective for once. Fa looks hesitant, unsure of being separated from Darin during such a critical moment. Standing under the bright lights of the lobby, Darin asks her to trust her and just watch. She insists that even if she falters, she wants to handle it on her own merit. A blush creeps onto Fa's face as she realizes Darin is truly trying to stand on her own 2 feet. With a confident thumbs up, Darin promises to give the performance of a lifetime. On stage, the hosts kick off the show, their voices booming over the expectant crowd. A young girl takes her seat at the grand piano, the first of many talents to showcase their skills. After a successful set, the children bow politely, earning a warm round of applause from the room. Fa finds a spot in the wings, noticing that the next performer is someone she recognizes. Little Melody is led onto the stage, looking small but determined under the spotlight. She takes a moment to scan the audience, searching for the faces that matter most to her. Her face lights up with pure joy as she spots her sister and Darin watching from the sound booth. From their vantage point, Darin holds up a phone to record every second of the little girl's big moment. Melody plays with a level of skill that proves talent truly does run in the family. As the final notes fade, the hosts return to the stage to announce the main event of the evening. The crowd erupts as Darin and May step out together, their presence commanding the room's attention. Fa watches from the side, her heart racing as she senses a massive shift about to occur. Darin takes a deep breath, her eyes locked on the stage as she prepares to prove her worth. Fa realizes that this isn't just a concert, it's the definitive turning point for Darin's future. With a final, knowing smirk toward the wings, Darin signals for Fa to pay close attention to what happens next. Darin stands at the threshold of the stage, the blinding light a stark contrast to her inner turmoil. May reaches out, her hand a grounding weight against Darin's cold fingers as the pressure of the moment mounts. With a reassuring squeeze, May wordlessly promises that they'll face this together. Darin looks down, her eyes shadowed by the crushing weight of her own self-doubt. Finally, the duo steps forward, their silhouettes swallowed by the radiant glow of the stage lights. They take their seats at the grand piano, two small figures against a backdrop of massive expectations. Darin steals a glance at May, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looks away, the sheer scale of the audience making her world spin. May holds up a finger, a silent command to stay focused and stick to the plan. Darin clutches her chest, desperate to catch a breath that feels just out of reach. May remains a pillar of calm, her steady gaze refusing to let Darin crumble. Biting her lip, Darin tries to push back the familiar urge to simply disappear. Then, the first notes fall, their hands beginning a delicate dance across the ivory. From the darkness of the crowd, Fa watches with bated breath, her heart heavy with unspoken worry. Fingers strike the keys with technical precision, but the soul behind them is wavering. The audience sits in rapt silence, a sea of eyes judging every single vibration in the air. Whispers begin to ripple through the back rows as the performance takes hold. Some listeners are genuinely impressed, their faces lighting up at the complex melody. Yet, a few keen ears start to notice a subtle fracture in the rhythm. On stage, the tension is palpable as Darin's composure begins to fray at the edges. Her hands tremble, the keys feeling like a jagged obstacle course rather than an instrument. Fear washes over her face, the terrifying realization that she's losing control setting in. She gasps for air, the physical weight of her panic threatening to shut her down completely. The grand piano looms large, a silent witness to her potential failure in this critical moment. Fa watches from her seat, recognizing the exact moment Darin's internal walls start to collapse. May glances sideways, her brows furrowing as she realizes she must compensate for the erratic tempo. Fa remains frozen in the audience, her hands clasped as she prays for Darin to find her footing. She stands tall among the crowd, her gaze fixed solely on the girl struggling under the spotlight. Darin feels the heat of the stage lights like a spotlight on her deepest insecurities. Tears prick at her eyes as the desire to run away becomes almost unbearable. Suddenly, her eyes lock onto a familiar face standing out in the sea of strangers. The sight of Fa acts like an anchor, stopping the downward spiral of her thoughts. Darin looks back at the keys, the memory of her promise to Fa flooding back. Overhead, the two pianists continue, but the energy in the room is about to shift. A spark of defiance flickers in Darin's eyes, replacing the hollow fear of moments ago. Her expression hardens into a mask of pure, unadulterated determination. She strikes the keys with a ferocity that rings through the entire hall. No longer content to hide, Darin sits tall, reclaiming her space at the bench. Her fingers fly across the piano, no longer running away but chasing the music itself. May feels the sudden surge of power beside her, her head snapping around in shock. She watches Darin with wide eyes, witnessing a transformation she never thought possible. In the back of her mind, May recalls the rumors of a girl who could never finish a song. Darin's foot slams onto the pedal, grounding the performance in a rich, resonant bass. Her hands become a blur of motion, commanding the piano with absolute authority. May can barely keep up, the sheer intensity of Darin's playstyle catching her off guard. Taking a sharp, cleansing breath, Darin finally lets go of the ghost of her past. She looks toward the audience and offers a small, knowing smile that says everything. With a final look of focus, she dives back into the heart of the composition. Their hands move in a complex, overlapping symphony of perfect synchronization. May looks over, her confusion turning into a dawning sense of respect. Darin leans in, whispering a soft apology for the shaky start as she takes the lead. May is stunned into silence, realizing the girl next to her is finally showing her true self. A single, powerful chord is struck, resonating with the strength of a new beginning. The stage erupts in a brilliance of sound and light that leaves Fa completely breathless. Darin is no longer just a student. She is a performer, glowing with the light of her own hard-won victory. A hand firmly grips the wheelchair handle, signaling their arrival at the water's edge. Fa laughs behind the chair, while Darin wonders how she's expected to swim in her current condition. Fa kneels down with a reassuring gaze, promising Darin that they will navigate this challenge together. Darin's eyes widen in realization as she sees the determined spark in Fa's expression. Without a word, Fa effortlessly scoops Darin into her arms, carrying her toward the waves. Blushing furiously, Darin calls her an idiot for the sudden and bold move. Fa simply beams with a radiant smile, eager to share this moment of freedom in the water. The two share a joyous embrace in the surf, Darin's hat flying off as they let go of all their worries. Back on the stage, Darin's fingers fly across the piano keys with incredible precision and power. The audience is completely spellbound, watching the performance with bated breath. Darin remains locked in, pouring every ounce of her soul into the instrument. She feels a gentle, ghostly touch on her cheek, a sign that she isn't performing alone. May watches from the side, absolutely stunned by the level of skill her partner is displaying. A proud smile breaks across May's face as she realizes Darin has finally mastered the piece. Darin's profile is illuminated by the spotlight, her expression one of pure focus and determination. Her hands move in a blur of motion, maintaining a perfect, rhythmic pace. Darin leans into the melody, letting the warmth of the song guide her every movement. She reflects on the long struggle to get here, but now her feelings are flowing without hesitation. Her hand hovers over the keys as she contemplates what it truly means to find happiness. She remembers the shadows of her past, standing alone in the darkness of her own doubt. But those memories are replaced by the joy of their shared practice sessions and the bond they've built. She strikes the keys with authority, translating those complex emotions into a soaring climax. The grand piano resonates through the entire hall, marking the peak of their emotional duet. Darin looks up with a tender expression, sensing the invisible presence that has been her anchor. In the crowd, a listener is moved to silence, clutching her hands together in sheer awe. The music is so evocative that everyone in the room can feel the weight of Darin's sincerity. Tears well up in the eyes of the onlookers as the final notes begin to ring out. The younger students are visibly overwhelmed, captivated by the beauty of the performance. A listener covers her face, unable to hold back the raw emotion stirred by the melody. Darin finishes the piece with a triumphant laugh, radiating pure joy. The duet concludes under the bright stage lights, a perfect end to an unforgettable show. The talent show banner hangs over the now quiet stage, marking the end of the event. Afterward, a young student excitedly rushes up to hug Darin, praising her incredible talent. Darin laughs at the enthusiasm, while May playfully warns the girl not to knock them over. The organizers are thrilled, noting that the performance has already inspired many parents to enroll their kids in the studio. Despite the praise, Darin remains humble, telling the student they still have much to learn. Fa stands in the background, giving a cool thumbs up to acknowledge Darin's growth. The young girl gives Darin one last squeeze, clearly inspired by her new idol. Someone pulls out a smartphone to capture a photo of the group to remember this milestone. The trio poses together for a commemorative picture, smiles all around. The photo is later uploaded to social media, quickly garnering hundreds of supportive likes. A pair of shoes steps across a tiled floor as the scene shifts to a quiet, private moment. Darin sits at a cafe, reflecting on the day while enjoying a well-deserved slice of cake. Fa stands nearby in her sharp formal outfit, laughing at Darin's dramatic personality. Darin asks why she hasn't changed yet, and Fa admits she kept the clothes on because May liked them. Pouting slightly, Darin teases Fa about how much she seems to value May's compliments. Fa's expression suddenly turns serious as she produces a beautiful bouquet of white flowers. She presents the flowers to Darin, asking for a genuine chance to express what's in her heart. Darin is stunned, her fork pausing midair as she looks up at her companion in shock. She stands up slowly, her heart racing as she tries to process the weight of the gesture. Darin reaches out to accept the bouquet, her hands trembling as they brush against Fa's. She hides her face behind the petals, reminding Fa that this entire world is just a dream. Looking over the flowers, Darin points out that even this gift isn't technically real. Fa's gaze softens, showing that she is fully aware of their surreal circumstances. She smiles brightly, acknowledging the dream, but refusing to let it diminish her intent. Darin looks at her with wide, questioning eyes, searching for the reason behind it all. Fa explains that even if their surroundings are an illusion, the feelings she holds are completely real. She laughs warmly, telling Darin to stop overthinking and just trust the bond they share. Moved to tears by the sincerity, Darin clutches the flowers tightly against her chest. She calls Fa an idiot once more, her voice thick with a mix of frustration and affection. With tears streaming down her face, she admits that a confession like that is impossible to reject. Fa's excitement boils over as she wonders if they are officially a couple now. Darin quickly puts a stop to the celebration, telling her not to get ahead of herself. She points a finger at Fa, insisting they take the time to truly understand each other first. Fa beams with happiness, more than happy to agree to those terms. She reaches out and gently takes Darin's hand, cementing their new beginning. The two share a tender, quiet moment as the dream world begins to shimmer. Their joined hands are enveloped in a soft, glowing blue light as the connection deepens. In the real world, the two girls lie peacefully in bed, their hands still intertwined in their sleep. The room remains dark and silent, with a smartphone resting quietly on the nightstand. The phone sits still for a moment, its screen dark and cold. Suddenly, the device begins to vibrate, its screen illuminating the room with a new notification. A message from May pops up, asking when Darin is free for a private outing. A second text follows immediately, with May making it clear she wants it to be just the two of them. May arrives at a familiar doorstep, politely offering a box of snacks to the woman who greets her. She accepts the invitation to enter the grand residence, moving inside to check on a longtime friend. The sound of footsteps echoes through the hallway as the two exchange updates on their lives. May's expression softens into concern upon hearing that the girl she came to see has recently returned from a hospital stay. Stepping into the quiet room, May finds her friend still resting in a specialized medical bed. She takes a seat by the bedside, observing the frail state of the girl who remains unconscious. Wringing her hands nervously, May struggles with the weight of the somber atmosphere. She leans forward, looking down at the sleeping figure with a heart full of unspoken words. The woman speaks of her unwavering hope, her face etched with the weariness of years spent waiting. May listens intently as the mother declares her belief that her daughter will eventually wake up. The conversation shifts to the passage of time, noting that May has reached the same age her friend was when she first fell ill. A look of realization washes over May as she considers how much of her life has moved forward while her friends remain still. The mother stands by the window, questioning if keeping her daughter in this state is truly for the best. May remains silent, absorbing the heavy philosophical dilemma presented by the grieving parent. A close-up of the medical equipment highlights the fragile thread currently sustaining the girl's life. The mention of letting go strikes a painful chord, leaving May visibly shaken. The mother quickly apologizes for the dark turn of the conversation, while standing near a display of past achievements. Trying to lighten the mood, the mother encourages May to play the piano, praising her growth as a musician. May humbly shakes her head, looking at her palms and insisting that she can never truly reach her friend's level of genius. She closes her eyes, reflecting on the gap between her own talent and the one-in-a-million skill of the sleeping girl. The mother places a comforting hand on May's head, mentioning a new pianist she met whose style is a perfect mirror of her daughter's. Surprised by the claim, the mother gestures toward her mouth, recalling just how hauntingly similar the playing was. May looks down, her mind racing as she considers the implications of such a unique musical connection. She reaches out toward her friend's hand, promising to bring this mysterious pianist to play for her one day. May pauses just before making contact, her fingers hovering near the medical tubing. The mother notices May's hesitation and encourages her to finally touch her friend's hand. May offers a polite but sad smile, declining the gesture for a very specific reason. She laughs it off, joking that her friend would surely be annoyed if someone touched her without a proper introduction. Back at the apartment, Fa is absolutely livid, her face contorted in a comedic rage over May's date proposal. The ghost shadow boxes the air, venting her frustrations while Darin watches from her desk. Fa insists she is the only rational one in the room, her competitive spirit fully ignited. Darin simply chuckles, looking down at her phone as she confirms she has already accepted May's invitation. Fa zooms in close to confront Darin, accusing her of lacking sincerity in their own budding relationship. Darin stands up to reassure her, explaining that the outing is merely a professional celebration. Unconvinced, Fa reminds Darin of her old feelings for May, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. Darin goes quiet, her gaze fixed on her device as she processes the blunt reminder of her past. Sensing an opportunity to tease, Darin asks if Fa is simply feeling jealous. She flashes a playful grin, finding Fa's over-the-top reaction to be incredibly endearing. Darin suddenly opens her arms wide, asking the ghost if she can have a hug. Fa hesitates, pointing out the technical impossibility of a physical embrace between a human and a spirit. Darin ignores the logic, gently guiding Fa to move just a little bit closer. Fa follows the instructions, looking completely bewildered as she stands before her partner. In a surprising move, Darin leans in and wraps her arms around the spectral form of the blonde girl. She holds on tight, closing her eyes to savor the moment of emotional closeness. Fa's face turns a bright shade of crimson, her expression one of pure shock and embarrassment. Darin rests her head against Fa, maintaining a strictly professional focus on the comfort of the embrace. Fa tries to regain her composure, dismissing the gesture as a fake interaction. Darin looks up with a gaze of pure sincerity, refuting the claim that she feels nothing. She explains that she can feel the unique, ethereal coldness that defines Fa's presence. Looking directly into Fa's eyes, Darin insists that the experience is very real to her. A warm smile spreads across Darin's face as she confesses that only Fa can provide this specific sensation. Fa has left speechless, hiding her face in her hands as her heart races. Darin continues to hug her, casually mentioning that Fa should come along to the celebration as well. Fa eventually gives in, her earlier anger replaced by a soft, flustered glow. As the night deepens, the scene shifts to May's darkened bedroom. May sits alone, her mind troubled by the grim thoughts shared earlier that day. She tries to brush off the mother's despair, telling herself it was just a moment of extreme fatigue. Her eyes sharpen with determination, refusing to believe that her friend is beyond reach. She sits on the edge of her bed, looking toward the silhouette of her piano in the corner. May pulls the curtains aside, staring out into the moonlit night as she formulates a plan. She stands resolute, convinced that Darin's masterful playing is the key to finally bringing her friend back to the world. May stares intently at her coffee, her mind heavy with the weight of her secret plan. Her companion bluntly questions the logic of using a ghost story to justify Darin's unique piano talent. Startled by the sudden criticism, May nearly fumbles her phone in a moment of sheer embarrassment. The woman advises May to stop dwelling on mystical theories and focus on the person she is meeting today. Meanwhile, at the amusement park, Darin checks her messages while a grumpy Fa hovers impatiently nearby. Fa insists that May has stood them up and urges Darin to just give up and head home. The grand spires of the park's castle loom against a bright, clear sky as the day begins. Darin points out they are actually 30 minutes early just as another person enters the frame. May arrives on the scene, looking stylish and breathless from her hurried arrival. Darin greets her with a wide, genuine smile, completely ignoring Fa's frustrated, cross-armed stance. A spark of pure excitement flickers in Darin's eyes as she takes in her friend's appearance. May adjusts her hat, surprised to find that Darin was the one who actually arrived ahead of schedule. Observing Darin's outfit, May privately notes that her friend looks exceptionally good today. The park entrance bustles with energy as the two girls prepare to start their adventure. Their footsteps fall in sync as they move toward the first set of attractions. Darin curiously asks why May's little sister, Melody, didn't join them for the outing. A hilarious flashback reveals May literally locked Melody in her room to ensure she wouldn't tag along. May explains she wanted to be the one waiting for Darin, though her plan clearly failed. Darin beams with joy, revealing this is her very first time visiting a park with a real friend. The admission catches May completely off guard, leaving her momentarily speechless. A soft, sincere blush creeps onto May's face as she processes Darin's heartfelt words. The two girls walk side by side into the heart of the park, their bond visibly strengthening. They stop to watch the carousel, where the bright lights and music create a magical atmosphere. The adrenaline hits hard as the duo screams their lungs out on a high-speed coaster. They pause for a photo, posing with colorful ice cream cones in front of a heart-shaped display. May playfully tasks Darin with holding her hat, designating her as the official assistant for the day. They step into a brightly lit souvenir shop filled with rows of adorable plushies. May's eyes land on a specific accessory as they browse the shelves together. Leading the way, May guides Darin toward a display of fun animal ear headbands. May reaches up to place a pair of ears on Darin's head with careful, focused precision. Darin stands frozen in place as May compliments how cute she looks in the accessory. Blushing furiously, Darin insists the headbands actually look much better on May instead. The unexpected compliment hits May like a physical force, leaving her flustered and wide-eyed. Trying to regain her composure, May grabs Darin's to pull her toward the next ride. Their hands remain firmly linked, a simple gesture that carries a surprising amount of weight. Darin stares at the contact with wide, surprised eyes, her heart racing from the sudden closeness. Fa suddenly appears beside them, her expression darkening with intense, ghostly jealousy. The ghost mockingly calls Darin a bag carrier and a third wheel in her own date. Fa turns away coldly, declaring her hatred for cheaters and promising a week of silence. Darin's internal world crumbles as she sheds imaginary tears over Fa's harsh spectral wrath. Despite the invisible tension, May continues to lead a dazed Darin through the park. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in deep orange hues above the towering rides. As night falls, they board a private gondola on the giant Ferris wheel for a quiet break. Darin sits stiffly in the cabin, her hands resting nervously on her lap as they ascend. The atmosphere inside the small space becomes thick with an awkward, heavy silence. May breaks the quiet, asking if Darin's sudden silence is because she is scared of heights. Shifting the topic, May brings up the prestigious Queen's Piano competition. Darin admits she will try her best, even if she isn't certain she has what it takes to win. May lets out a soft, cryptic laugh that immediately catches Darin's attention. Feeling defensive, Darin asks if May is mocking her for having such simple ambitions. May's hand reaches for the cabin's handle as she looks out at the glowing city lights. Darin demands to know the real reason behind May's mysterious and sudden laughter. May looks down, her expression softening into a look of absolute sincerity. Her eyes lock onto Darin's with an intensity that demands her full and undivided attention. May leans in closer, closing the physical gap between them in the narrow cabin. The two girls sit face to face as the Ferris wheel reaches its highest point. Darin's breath hitches as she realizes the gravity of the shift in the atmosphere. May finally looks her straight in the eye and confesses that she truly likes her. Darin reflects on the crushing weight of her past, back when her world was defined by the success of others. The sharp click of a heel on the stage floor signals the arrival of a true prodigy. Melissa, known to Darin as May, commands the grand hall as she approaches the piano with absolute confidence. In the audience, other contestants can only grumble in resignation, knowing they're merely competing for second place. Darin stares on, her eyes fixed on the girl who seems to exist in a completely different realm of talent. The golden trophy is a heavy symbol of the undeniable gap between them. May accepts her award with the poise of a seasoned professional, accustomed to the spotlight. She is a figure who naturally radiates brilliance, casting a long shadow over everyone else. But now, that same brilliant girl is sitting across from Darin, her face flushed with a desperate sincerity. Darin can only point to herself in confusion, certain that there has been a massive misunderstanding. The cabin remains tense as Darin tries to laugh off the confession, while Fa watches the unfolding drama from the corner. Darin doubles over, convinced that May is simply playing an elaborate prank on her. May's patience snaps instantly, her frustration reaching a boiling point at being treated like a comedian. High above the ground, May's internal scream of annoyance practically echoes outside the Ferris wheel. She clutches her head in agony, unable to believe that her heartfelt words are being met with such mockery. Darin claps her hands together, still finding the idea of a superstar liking her to be the joke of the century. Wiping a tear from her eye, Darin explains that the public would find this pairing absolutely ridiculous. May's gaze turns sharp and piercing, her eyes glowing with a renewed, fiery determination. Her hand grips the seat with enough force to show she isn't backing down from this confrontation. Darin gestures wildly, listing all the reasons why someone as perfect as May should look elsewhere. May looks away, her voice softening as she admits that she actually finds Darin's quirks quite charming. Darin tells her she needs an eye exam, refusing to accept even the smallest compliment. Watching from the side, Fa realizes that Darin's lack of self-worth is making this conversation impossible. Darin continues to beam with a self-deprecating smile, completely oblivious to the weight of the moment. May shouts in protest, her heart racing as she tries to bridge the gap between them. Fa senses the atmosphere shifting, predicting that May is about to reach her absolute limit. In her mind, the ghost imagines May finally losing her cool and physically shaking some sense into Darin. Suddenly, May bolts upright, the sudden movement catching both Darin and Fa off guard. May declares that her feelings aren't easily given, and she truly admires the way Darin plays the piano. Darin finds it even more hilarious that a master pianist would find value in her amateur skills. Outside the glass, the tension is palpable as May realizes her words alone aren't enough to break through Darin's shell. May marches forward, her footsteps echoing with a heavy, decisive rhythm. She reaches out, her shadow looming over Darin as she prepares to take drastic action. With a quick motion, May seizes Darin's collar, forcing her to pay attention. Fa gasps in shock, realizing that May has completely abandoned her usual composure. May's face is inches away now, her expression a mix of raw vulnerability and intense focus. She hoists Darin up, demanding that she stop running away from the truth of their connection. Fa watches with bated breath, the technical reality of the situation finally sinking in. The distance between the two musicians vanishes as May pulls Darin into her personal space. Their eyes meet in a moment of silent, high-stakes realization. May leans in, determined to provide a proof of sincerity that Darin cannot possibly laugh away. The two share a sudden, firm contact that signals the end of all jokes and games. As they remain close, the fireworks outside mirror the explosive shift in their relationship. Suddenly, the cabin's atmosphere curdles as Fa sees a terrifying reflection of her own bloody past appearing behind her. The spectral image mocks Fa, calling this the price for her continued denial of reality. The phantom leans in close to the ghost, whispering that it is time to face the truth she has been hiding from. Fa's eye glows with a panicked intensity as she is forced to confront her own helplessness in this body. Back in the center of the cabin, the two girls remain frozen in the aftermath of their bold encounter. Darin stares wide-eyed, her breath hitching as she realizes May was never joking. May keeps her grip firm, her gaze locked onto Darin to ensure the message has finally been received. Clutching her chest, May breathes out a final, desperate plea for Darin to take her seriously. Darin touches her own lips in a daze, the reality of May's confession finally shattering her world. The blood-soaked phantom leans in, mocking Fa with a chilling question about her current situation. It stands tall, emphasizing Fa's helplessness as a mere observer to the unfolding drama. A dark, spectral hand reaches out, warning that Darin's fall from grace is only just beginning. The vision shifts to bare feet standing on a cold, uncertain surface, representing the harsh reality awaiting them. Fa can only watch in despair as the weight of her past continues to haunt her every thought. The phantom wraps its arms around her, contrasting Fa's lack of a physical form with May's tangible presence. With a terrifying grin, the entity demands that Fa finally make a choice before it's too late. Back in the physical world, the sound of footsteps on the pavement marks a return to the night's events. Darin walks between May and the silent ghost, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. May breaks the silence with a blush, turning the conversation toward more personal matters. She glances back, pointedly asking Darin if there is currently a boyfriend in the picture. Darin and the ghost exchange a look, both caught off guard by the sudden interrogation. May waits expectantly for an answer, her curiosity clearly getting the better of her. With a serious expression, Darin truthfully reveals that she is currently single. May's face lights up with a triumphant smile, seemingly pleased by this revelation. The mood shifts instantly when Darin mentions there is already someone she holds dear. May stops in her tracks, her expression hardening as she processes this unexpected obstacle. Darin tries to explain herself while the ghost stands by, watching the confrontation unfold. May closes the distance, declaring that she won't give up because someone else is in the way. She makes it clear that only a committed relationship would ever make her consider backing down. With a playful yet determined gesture, May challenges Darin to prove her commitment. The group finally disperses under the glow of the streetlights, ending their night out. On the train ride back, Darin and the ghost stand side by side in total silence. Darin steals a glance at her companion, feeling the weight of the earlier conversation. She looks away quickly, her mind racing with a flurry of conflicting emotions. The long journey home feels increasingly awkward as neither of them knows how to break the ice. Finally reaching the safety of her home, Darin prepares to face the rest of her evening. She steps quietly into her room, trying not to disturb the peace of the household. Sitting alone in the dim light, Darin reflects on everything that transpired with May. The ghost suddenly speaks up, demanding to know why Darin is remaining so quiet. She turns around with a stern look, ready to voice her frustrations about the day's events. The ghost sits directly in front of Darin, making it impossible to ignore her presence. Darin tries to apologize for May's forward behavior, sensing her companion's growing agitation. She touches her lips, still dazed by the intensity of the earlier encounter. The ghost looks down, her eyes hidden in shadow as she struggles with her own feelings. She begs Darin not to be angry, her voice filled with a rare vulnerability. Darin is stunned when a hand reaches out to gently tilt her face upward. They lean toward each other, confirming their profound spiritual connection with a deep embrace. The ghost's eyes flutter shut as she fully commits to this moment of shared understanding. Darin's eyes widen in realization, feeling the true depth of their partnership. The two remain locked in a close bond, the air around them shimmering with energy. Suddenly, the ghost pulls back slightly, her face flushing as she scolds Darin for being an idiot. Darin is left speechless, her hands raised in surprise at the sudden outburst. They stare at one another, the reality of their mutual commitment finally sinking in. A rush of color floods Darin's face as she realizes the implications of their bond. A hand reaches out through a haze of light, seeking a reassuring touch. Fingers intertwine, cementing a promise to stay by each other's side. They pull each other close once more, reinforcing their vow to face any challenge together. The intensity of their shared resolve is captured in a close-up of their faces. Every moment spent together strengthens the foundation of their technical and spiritual alliance. They find comfort in each other's presence, ignoring the world outside their shared space. In this quiet moment, their partnership becomes an unbreakable force. The scene transitions to hands resting gently on a lush, green field in a dreamlike realm. Both girls stand together under a bright sky, officially acknowledging their new status as partners. Darin lies back on the grass, feeling a sense of relief now that the truth is out. Her companion looks thoughtful, though a hint of jealousy still lingers in her expression. She bites her lip, planning her next move to handle the persistent May. Looking determined, she vows to be the one to personally set the record straight. Darin laughs at the ghost's mischievous plan to intervene in May's dreams. They discuss the logistical difficulties of executing such a supernatural strategy. The ghost expresses her frustration with her current form, wishing she could act more directly. She playfully tugs at Darin's hair, reasserting her protective claim over her. They share another close moment on the grass, their bond stronger than ever before. Their foreheads touch as they find peace in this private, sun-drenched world. Holding hands, they confirm their loyalty to one another amidst the sparkling light. Back in reality, a finger presses the doorbell, interrupting the quiet of the home. Darin heads to the door, wondering who could be visiting at such a late hour. She cautiously pulls the door open, completely unprepared for who awaits inside. May stands there, holding a gift and looking as confident as ever. Behind a smiling Darin, the ghost manifests with a terrifying, demonic aura, ready for a confrontation. May reflects on the boldness of her previous encounter, her mind racing with second thoughts as she questions her own forwardness. She decides to bridge the gap with a peace offering, planning a surprise visit to Darin's home with a box of snacks. Leaning against the counter, she finalizes her strategy to win over both Darin and her family. With a look of absolute determination, she commits to the plan, ready to face whatever comes next. Darin is caught off guard when she opens the door, quickly ushering her persistent guest inside. Darin's mother is visibly stunned, her hand flying to her chest as she realizes who has arrived. May immediately shifts into a polite, respectful persona, offering a traditional greeting to the lady of the house. The mother's suspicion quickly evaporates, replaced by relief that Darin is finally making such well-mannered friends. May plays the part of the perfect guest, charming the mother by affectionately addressing her. The atmosphere lightens instantly as the mother invites Mai to stay for a home-cooked dinner. Darin leads the way upstairs, her hand turning the doorknob to her private sanctuary. She offers a quick warning about the room's modest size while Fa's jealous spirit looms behind her. May's attention is immediately drawn to the glowing screen of a laptop sitting on the desk. The display shows a chaotic, terrifying mass of colors that looks like something out of a nightmare. Darin frantically tries to cover for the strange sight, claiming it's just reference material for a project. As they settle onto the bed, Darin gets straight to the point, asking for the true reason behind this late-night visit. May looks down, her voice softening as she prepares to offer a sincere apology for her past actions. Darin offers a bright, forgiving smile, completely unaware of the spectral fury radiating from the ghost beside her. May presents her gift, still worried that her previous behavior might have caused a lasting rift. Darin reaches out to accept the offering, insisting that everything is perfectly fine between them. May carefully selects a piece of chocolate, her confidence returning as she realizes she's back in Darin's good graces. She playfully reaches out to touch Darin's face, testing the boundaries of their newfound comfort. A flirtatious wink accompanies her words, signaling that she intends to make the most of this evening. From her perch on the desk, Fa watches the interaction with a cold, calculating gaze. The ghost's face is cast in a demonic red glow as she decides that this intruder has crossed the line. A close-up of Fa's glowing eye reveals a terrifying resolve to take matters into her own hands. The two girls sit in an awkward silence, the air thick with unspoken tension and spectral malice. The tension is broken by a call from downstairs, announcing that the evening meal is finally ready. Outside, a sudden downpour begins to lash against the windows, changing the night's trajectory. While the girls occupy themselves with a game, Darin's mother realizes that the storm is too dangerous for travel. May's face lights up with pure joy as she is granted permission to stay the night. As May prepares to call home, Fa stands directly behind her, a silent shadow of impending doom. May boasts into the phone about her successful conquest, while Fa's dark aura begins to swallow the room. The ghost's foot moves with predatory precision, closing the distance between her and the unsuspecting target. Fa looms over May with a terrifying grin, promising a psychological lesson she will never forget. Darin excuses herself to the bathroom, leaving the living world and the spirit realm to collide. The clinical white tiles of the bathroom provide a stark contrast to the dark events unfolding in the bedroom. Fa corners Darin in the private space, insisting that she is the only one who can handle the intruder. Darin looks on with concern, worried that the ghost's protective instincts are becoming too extreme. Their fingers interlace as they engage in a silent, high-stakes negotiation over May's fate. Darin pleads with the spirit to show a modicum of restraint and not take the haunting too far. A dark, mischievous smirk plays across Fa's lips as she considers the request. The ghost pulls Darin into a close, technical embrace, exerting her dominance over the situation. Fa initiates a spiritual synchronization, sealing their pact with a pulse of spectral energy. Their foreheads meet in a moment of intense connection, bonding their wills together for the night ahead. Fa's eyes flare with a sinister light as she reveals her plan is far more terrifying than Darin imagined. Darin is left shivering, realizing that she has unleashed a force she can no longer control. Later that night, the girls prepare for sleep, with May settling onto the floor while Darin takes the bed. Darin reaches for the wall, her hand hovering over the switch as she prepares to plunge the room into darkness. As the lights go out, Darin closes her eyes, hoping for a peaceful night that isn't coming. May drifts off into a deep slumber, completely unaware that she is now vulnerable. In the shadows, a figure begins to stir, rising silently from the darkness. Fa stands over the sleeping Mai like a vengeful guardian, her gaze fixed and unyielding. The spirit observes how peacefully her rival sleeps, savoring the calm before the psychological storm. Fa prepares to breach the barrier between reality and the subconscious mind. She leans down, her essence beginning to merge with May's dream state. The ghost successfully enters the dreamscape, manifesting her presence within the girl's mind. Fa's eyes snap wide in confusion as she realizes the dream world is reacting in an unexpected way. Instead of a nightmare, Fa finds herself seated at a massive, polished grand piano. She looks around the void in shock, realizing her powers of manifestation are being overwritten. A dream version of Darin approaches the piano, her presence feeling hollow and strange. The dream Darin stares blankly ahead, a silent puppet in a memory she didn't mean to share. The scene shifts violently to a memory of a grand estate battered by a relentless thunderstorm. Inside, a hand swirls a glass of dark wine, reflecting a somber and clinical atmosphere. A man peers through his glasses, his expression devoid of warmth as he prepares to speak. He addresses a woman across the table, discussing a final decision regarding their daughter's life. A close-up of his cold, calculating eye emphasizes the gravity of the medical choice they are making. The mother stares into her glass, her face a mask of grief and exhaustion. She finally voices the unthinkable, suggesting they stop fighting against the inevitable. With a shaking voice, she proposes signing a DNR order if their daughter's heart fails one more time. Witnessing this memory, Fa is struck by a wave of pure, unfiltered shock. The dream Darin begins to tremble, the weight of her parents' words crushing her spirit. Tears overflow as the realization of her own fragility and her parents' despair hits home. Fa's expression shifts from malice to absolute dread as she understands the true tragedy haunting Darin's soul. Сцена пропущена через помилки генерації API або провалу валідації. A man in a sharp suit takes a photo with his phone, capturing the success of the evening's performance. A younger Fa, clutching a vibrant bouquet, stands beside a glowing professor who praises her growing talent. Fa laughs off the compliment, insisting the professor is the one who remains as amazing as ever. The professor smiles warmly, noting how unusually modest his star pupil is being. He places a paternal hand on her head, acknowledging that anyone can see how special she truly is. Former students gather around the stage to offer their congratulations to the master pianist. Fa looks on with a soft smile, though she wonders why this specific concert keeps appearing in her dreams. She watches the crowd, fearing that a more talented newcomer might eventually make the world forget her. Her gaze turns determined, knowing she must win next year's competition to truly be remembered. A young girl suddenly appears on the stage, looking up at the elegant pianist in total wonder. Fa kneels down to the child's level, kindly asking if she is one of the professor's many students. The girl shakes her head and Fa beams, wondering how the little one managed to get backstage. The child explains that her parents couldn't make it, so she attended the concert with her aunt instead. Fa reaches out to gently pat the girl's head, asking if she enjoyed the musical performance. Unexpectedly, the little girl grabs Fa's arm with a sudden, intense grip. With stars in her eyes, the child shouts out a passionate confession of how much she likes her. Fa is taken aback by the girl's blunt claim that she was even more amazing than the professor. The child begins to throw a mini tantrum, frustrated that such a talent only played for a short time. She stomps her feet, loudly questioning if the rest of the audience is simply deaf to Fa's skill. To quiet the commotion, the girl buries her face into the bouquet of flowers Fa is holding. Fa scoops the little menace up into her arms, deciding it's time to reunite her with her aunt. As they walk, Fa explains that she was only a guest performer, not the star of the show. She offers a weary smile, describing her role as a mere supporting character for the night. The young girl looks up from Fa's arms, processing the idea of being a supporting role. She concludes that being a supporting character must mean Fa is exceptionally skilled in her own right. Fa's eyes widen in surprise at the child's innocent yet profound observation. The girl makes a bold request, asking if she can be Fa's supporting character when she becomes a star. Fa lets out a lighthearted laugh as she carries the girl through the now empty rows of the auditorium. They spot the girl's aunt waiting nearby, and Fa realizes the child's offer might actually be a great idea. The aunt holds up her phone to record the moment, while the young girl clings to her new idol. Fa promises that if she ever becomes the star, she will invite the girl to stand by her side. The dream shatters violently, blood-red cracks spreading across the memory of the young girl's face. Fa wakes up in the dark, sitting alone on the floor of Darin's apartment as the rain continues to fall. She pulls a blanket around her shoulders, her mind racing with worry about Darin's long absence. Just as the anxiety peaks, the sound of the front door opening signals Darin's return. Fa stands up, relieved to see her friend, but the relief is short-lived. Darin lifts her head, revealing eyes that are bloodshot and heavy with exhaustion. Fa gasps, visibly shaken by the haunted and broken expression on Darin's face. Darin stands by the door, soaked to the bone and shrouded in an oppressive shadow. She reaches out with a trembling hand to flick the light switch, illuminating the room. Her clothes are drenched and her hair is a mess, looking as though she's been through a physical ordeal. Fa stares in disbelief, demanding to know what could have possibly happened while she was gone. Darin drops to her knees and places a hand on Fa's shoulder, assuring her that May is safe. Fa looks up, her heart pounding, as Darin prepares to deliver news that will change everything. Leaning in close, Darin reveals the ultimate secret. She has finally discovered Fa's real name. Fa's face lights up with joy, thinking that knowing her identity is finally the breakthrough they needed. She flashes a wide, hopeful grin, asking if this means things are finally going to get better. The smile quickly fades when she sees that Darin isn't sharing in her celebration. Darin stares down at the floor, her expression cold and devoid of any hope. Fa's realization sinks in as she notices Darin's wet clothes clinging to her like a second skin. Seeing Darin's profound sadness, Fa understands that the state of her real body must be dire. Darin tells Fa to pull herself together and listen, because their time is officially running out. She clenches her fist against her leg, struggling to find the words for the medical reality. With a pained look, Darin explains that Fa's physical body is currently fighting for life in the ICU. The room turns cold as Darin reveals the family's decision to stop life support if another crisis occurs. Tears begin to stream down Darin's face as she confirms the grim truth of the DNR order. She wipes her eyes, mentioning that she already promised May she would visit the hospital. Looking Fa directly in the eyes, Darin asks if she is truly prepared to wake up and face this reality. Fa remains silent for a moment, the weight of her mortality finally crashing down on her. She hardens her resolve, realizing she has no choice but to wake up before her body gives out. Darin watches her, a bittersweet smile playing on her lips as she prepares to finish the reveal. They sit across from each other on the rug, the atmosphere heavy with the gravity of the moment. Darin takes a deep breath, admitting that what she's about to say next might be even more shocking. She drops a truth bomb that leaves Fa completely stunned. She isn't actually 17 years old. Fa holds up her hands in confusion, insisting that she clearly remembers being a teenager. She argues that they all look the same age, so there's no way her memory could be that far off. Darin counters that 17 was simply the age Fa was when the tragic accident occurred. She looks down at her lap, explaining that Fa has been trapped in a deep sleep for a very long time. Fa stares back in absolute horror as the number of years is finally spoken aloud. Darin's eyes well up again as she delivers the crushing blow. Fa has been asleep for 10 whole years. The two figures sit in the dim light of the apartment, the reality of a lost decade hanging between them. Fa's breath hitches in her throat, her mind struggling to comprehend the life she's missed. She looks down at her hands, wondering how it's possible to lose so much time without knowing. She recalls the hazy, dreamlike stretches of time she experienced before meeting Darin. A close-up of her eyes shows the flicker of a dying hope that she could ever return to a normal life. Darin bows her head, mourning the future they could have shared if time hadn't been so cruel. Fa remains frozen, her mouth slightly agape as the weight of her 27 years sinks in. The realization that her dreams of a shared future are now hopeless leaves her completely hollow. She manages to find her voice, asking Darin to finally reveal the one piece of her identity left. The question of her name hangs in the air, a final mystery that might change everything. She reaches out to Darin, pleading to be woken up from this beautiful but painful dream. A vision of a younger, vibrant Fa laughing in the sunlight flashes across the screen. Back in the present, Darin nods slowly, ready to break the final seal on the past. She tells Fa to listen carefully as she prepares to speak the name that was lost to time. Darin's mouth opens to speak, the intensity of the moment reaching a fever pitch. Fa's eyes widen in anticipation, the world around her beginning to dissolve into light. Shards of memory sparkle and swirl as the final reveal is about to be made. Golden threads of fate weave through the darkness, pulling the past into the present. The scene shifts back to the concert, where the younger Fa asks the little girl for her name. The child beams with pride, announcing to her idol that her name is May. Young Fa smiles warmly, telling May she must remember her name for the rest of her life. The blonde pianist stands tall on the stage, ready to reveal her true name to the girl who would become her future. Small hands dance across the keys with a precision far beyond their years, executing a piece far too complex for a child. The piano teacher gazes in awe, noting that even with years of practice, most students could never master this composition. He explains that musicians are like magicians who conjure art from wood and wire, but young Fa remains silent, focused only on the technicality. She quickly realizes that this magic comes with a steep price. Every waking moment must be sacrificed to the instrument. A single finger strikes a note, echoing the cold truth that beautiful music isn't born from joy, but from endless repetition. Yet, as she plays, the notes seem to shimmer with an unnatural brilliance that leaves her instructors completely stunned. The teacher's eyes widen in disbelief as he realizes the child has perfectly memorized the entire sequence after hearing it only once. Even the intricate, subtle movements of the left hand were captured with flawless accuracy, leaving the man speechless. It wasn't long before she was holding her first trophy, officially labeled by the world as a once-in-a-generation genius. Standing on the podium, she feels the weight of the gold, yet her expression remains hauntingly blank and detached. For a prodigy like her, achieving what others spent lifetimes chasing felt far too easy to be rewarding. As cameras flash, the other competitors struggle to maintain their composure in the overwhelming shadow of her victory. She casually mentions that she only started learning a few months ago, completely unaware of how deeply that statement stings. Her peers look on with a mix of envy and despair, their years of hard work eclipsed in a single afternoon. She bluntly admits that winning requires no real effort or practice on her part, further alienating those around her. The girl standing next to her looks down, the joy of the competition completely drained from her face by Fa's words. Another rival stares in total shock, finally realizing the insurmountable gap in their natural abilities. Fa simply confirms their suspicions, not yet understanding the social toll her talent is taking on her life. She begins to notice the twisted, pained smiles of those whose dreams she unknowingly crushed with her effortless brilliance. Her fist clenches as the weight of being a dream destroyer finally starts to sink in her young mind. She reaches out into the darkness, realizing that her very presence in the musical world was a source of constant pain for others. The image of the grand piano begins to fracture and fall apart, representing the burden of a gift she never truly asked for. Years later, she finds herself stepping onto foreign soil, determined to prove her worth on a global stage. Even in the middle of a bustling, brightly lit city, she feels the cold isolation that comes with her success. She collapses over her sheet music in exhaustion, the pressure of maintaining her status becoming an unbearable weight. Looking up with a weary smile, she wonders if her special status was just an illusion created by her own small world. She finally steps into the international spotlight, managing to overtake the world-class performers she once admired from afar. But just as she was prepared to finally etch her name into history, a sudden tragedy strikes out of nowhere. Her reach for greatness is violently cut short, leaving her legacy unfinished and her future a blank void. In the starry expanse of the spiritual realm, she reflects with May on how all those years of fighting for first place feel hollow now. She smiles sadly, noting that she vanished from the world before she could create anything truly worth remembering. To the public, she was nothing more than a shooting star that flickered out before anyone could truly learn her name. Looking up at the cosmic sky, she laments the decades of life she sacrificed to a piano that can no longer hear her. She rests her head back, acknowledging the painful reality that she never quite reached the shore of her ultimate dream. It pisses her off to think that those she once surpassed have now moved on while she remains frozen in time. The frustration finally boils over, and she lets out a shout of pure rage at the unfairness of her lost decade. If she had known this would be the end, she would have chosen a normal life filled with simple, everyday pleasures. May listens intently as Fa describes the life she missed out on: the travel, the rest, and the simple freedom to play. More than anything, she regrets never having the chance to experience a genuine, deep connection with another person. Tears well up in her eyes as she realizes her choice to be a genius effectively robbed her of being a human being. May watches her silently, processing the immense depth of the pianist's hidden sorrow and regret. Fa brushes the tension off, suggesting they using their nicknames to avoid the weight of her real identity. She explains that her entire life was spent viewing every person she met as nothing more than a rival to overcome. Whenever she encountered someone new, her first instinct was to calculate if they were a threat to her ranking. In her hyper-competitive world, there was only ever room for one winner at the top of the podium. She admits to being an intensely jealous person who absolutely detests the idea of losing to anyone. Because of this nature, she never thought she could truly care for someone who existed in the same professional field. May smiles softly, noting that this fierce, competitive honesty is exactly what makes Fa who she is. Her expression turns serious as she prepares to ask a question that will define their future together. She asks if, despite remembering her past and her difficult nature, Fa still wants to maintain their partnership. She wonders if Fa's earlier feelings were only a result of her not remembering the person she used to be. Fa looks back at her, the heavy question hanging in the silent, starlit air between them. Their hands remain firmly joined, serving as a physical anchor in the middle of the vast, cosmic unknown. The silence stretches on as Fa searches her soul for a response that is both honest and fair. May waits with infinite patience, offering a look of unconditional support regardless of what the answer might be. They hold on even tighter, refusing to let go as the vision around them begins to shift and glow. Fa closes her eyes, reflecting on the deep-seated fear she held regarding her own true identity. She admits that she was terrified of what she would find if she looked too closely at the life she left behind. Standing together in the void, they prepare to face the uncertainty of what comes next for both of them. Fa turns away slightly, admitting she's been struggling with the exact same doubts about her own heart. She wonders if her affection for May was a genuine choice, or just a byproduct of her total isolation. She asks if it's cruel to think that she might have only leaned on May because there was simply no one else left. However, her face soon softens into a warm, genuine smile as she realizes the depth of her own feelings. May takes a breath, ready to provide the reassurance and strength that her friend desperately needs. She assures Fa that it is only natural for people to need someone to lean on during their darkest moments. She promises to keep supporting Fa, regardless of how her feelings might evolve once she returns to her body. May explains that their time together has made her much braver and helped her form other connections in the real world. Fa looks startled by May's selfless willingness to let her go if it means she will eventually find happiness. May's gaze remains steady and clear, filled with a maturity that belies the complexity of their situation. She emphasizes that Fa's happiness is her primary concern, even if it means their paths must finally diverge. She gives a bright, encouraging laugh, trying to lift the heavy atmosphere with her own positive energy. Fa stares at her in silence, completely caught off guard by such a display of genuine, selfless kindness. She looks down, deeply moved by the realization that someone finally cares for her as a person, not a prodigy. She leans in closer, finding May's lack of ego almost impossible to fully comprehend. With a playful, lighthearted remark, she questions if May is being far too much of a pushover for her own good. The two of them share a close, intimate moment as the final walls between their souls begin to crumble. They lean in toward each other, the distance between them vanishing in the quiet beauty of the stars. Fa teases her again, asking if she's lost her mind by being so incredibly supportive of someone so difficult. She admits her worries about the future, given how little they truly know about each other's physical lives. May places her hands firmly on Fa's shoulders, grounding her in the reality of the present moment. Fa pulls her into a tight, protective embrace, acknowledging that her feelings haven't changed in the slightest. May is caught completely by surprise, her face flushing red at the sudden and intense display of affection. Fa laughs with genuine joy, her spirit finally feeling lighter and freer than it has in over 10 years. She lifts their joined hands toward the sky, noting that there is one crucial thing they need to discuss. She worries that when she finally wakes up in her body, she might lose every memory of this encounter. May smiles, realizing that if they meet in the real world, Fa might view her as a total stranger or a creep. Fa agrees that it would be heartbreaking to lose the precious memories they've built together in this place. She knows her own stubborn nature would make it nearly impossible for her to believe the truth later on. They decide they need a secret code, a specific phrase that only the two of them would ever know. It must be something so deeply personal that even their closest family members would never be able to guess it. Fa suddenly has an idea, her face lighting up with a newfound sense of determination and hope. She tells May to listen very carefully, as this secret will be the only link between their two worlds. May waits with bated breath as Fa prepares to reveal the code that will bridge the gap between spirits and reality. Back in the waking world, a smartphone vibrates incessantly on the corner of a quiet school desk. A notification finally lights up the screen, delivering the miracle news. She is officially out of the ICU. Fa's physical form remains motionless, her eyes sealed shut as she lingers in a deep slumber. A mother's hand gently brushes against her hair, a silent gesture of enduring love and hope. In the quiet of the hospital room, she keeps a constant vigil by her daughter's side, surrounded by the hum of life support machinery. Her husband checks his phone, noting that May should be arriving at any moment to visit. He mentions that May is bringing a friend along, someone who reportedly plays the piano just like their daughter. The parents reflect on how strange it is that May found someone with a style so identical to Faz, a mystery they may never truly solve. Looking down, the mother remembers the days when her child was a shining star on the stage. She gently rests her hand near the pulse oximeter, feeling the faint, mechanical rhythm of a life held in the balance. Downstairs at the reception desk, May and Darin confirm that they are headed to room 301. May carries a portable keyboard, determined to bring the sound of music back into Faz's world. Darin listens intently, her expression serious as they prepare for the emotional confrontation ahead. Walking silently beside them, the spirit of Fa follows, her heart heavy with the weight of the coming reunion. Suddenly, the gruesome spirit of the past appears, its blood-stained finger pointing directly at the door to the room. Fa pauses, her gaze fixed on the entrance where her past and present are about to collide. As the girls step into the light of the room, the spectral figure watches them with a haunting intensity. May and Darin enter cautiously, greeted by the soft, weary voice of Faz's mother. Faz's eyes widen in absolute shock as she finally comes face to face with her parents. The couple turns toward the door, their faces illuminated by the afternoon sun streaming through the window. The mother offers a warm, heartbreaking smile, recognizing Darin from the many stories May has shared. Memories of the past flood back, recalling the day her parents saw her off at the station, promising to always be her home. She remembers the warmth of her mother's embrace during that snowy farewell. They had told her never to be afraid to come back, promising that they would always be waiting. Now, seeing them in the present, the sight of her father sitting tiredly on the sofa hits her with the force of a tidal wave. Spirit Fa clutches her chest, unable to hold back the tears as the reality of their sacrifice sinks in. The parents try to maintain a sense of normalcy, offering snacks to the young visitors. While May and Darin interact with the couple, Fa stands between them, a ghost in her own home, overwhelmed by grief. She sobs openly, her heart breaking for the time she has lost. The pristine image of the parents she remembered shatters like glass, replaced by a much harsher truth. She looks at them now and realizes just how much they have aged in her absence. Tears stream down her face as she notices every new line and gray hair. The father she remembered was a man who smiled easily, his face full of life and vigor. Now his eyes behind his glasses are clouded with a decade of exhaustion and sorrow. The cheerful grin of her youth has been replaced by a faint, weary lift of the mouth. He no longer looks like the vibrant man from her memories, but a person weathered by a long, painful vigil. The mother reaches out toward the space where Fa stands, her movements slow and fragile. Fa reaches back, her translucent hand hovering over her mother's. Desperate for a connection she cannot have, she sees the dark circles under her mother's eyes, proof of the countless sleepless nights spent praying for a miracle. A choked sob escapes her as she witnesses the physical toll her tragedy has taken on the woman she loves. Her hands tremble as she looks at her mother's thin frame, realizing that grief has accelerated the passage of time. Fa drops to her knees at her mother's feet, crying out an apology for making them wait so long. She realizes that while she was running from reality, her parents were paying the price with every new wrinkle on their faces. May and Darin look on, sensing the heavy atmosphere as the spirit of their friend collapses in despair. Fa remains hunched over on the floor, completely broken by the sight of her family's suffering. May looks down at her, her heart aching for the girl who is finally facing the truth. In a moment of distraction, May's bag slips from her hand, spilling its contents across the floor. Both girls quickly kneel to gather the fallen papers, trying to mask the tension in the room. May reaches out to pick up a sheet of paper that landed right next to Fa's spirit. She whispers a soft inquiry, asking Fa if she has the strength to continue. Fa looks up, her face partially veiled in shadow as she grapples with the urge to flee once more. The memory of her past cowardice flashes before her eyes, threatening to pull her back into the darkness. She stares at the floor, the weight of her parents' sacrifice anchoring her to the present. Stealing her resolve, she tugs at her ear and declares that she will not run away anymore. May looks at her with a steady, supportive gaze, acknowledging her friend's newfound courage. She stands up and tells Fa it is time to walk with her toward the final destination. May places a comforting hand on Fa's shoulder, offering her the strength she needs to move forward. Their hands meet in a soft glow of light, a silent pact between the living and the spirit. They walk toward the hospital bed in a heavy, shared silence. May and Fa stand side by side, bracing themselves for the sight they both knew was coming. They reach the foot of the bed, where the bloody spirit of the past stands as a grim sentinel. The spectral girl points her finger directly at the body lying beneath the sheets. The moment of truth has arrived, and there is no turning back from the reality of the situation. May and Fa stare forward, their expressions frozen in a mixture of dread and sorrow. May's eyes go wide as she finally sees the physical state of the friend she has come to know so well. Images of a brighter future flash through her mind. Like a day at the beach they once dreamed of sharing. She imagines them traveling to new places and eating delicious meals together in the sun. She pictures herself playing the piano in a grand hall, with Fa watching proudly from the audience. In her mind, Fa is laughing and clapping, her face full of life and joy. May had wanted to win just once with Fa there to witness her success. She envisioned them standing together, holding a trophy and celebrating a hard-earned victory. It seemed like such a simple, beautiful dream for two friends to have. But the woman May had spent so much time within the spirit realm was not the one lying on that bed. May's face is cast in shadow as she confronts the cold, clinical reality of the hospital room. On that bed, there were no dreams, only the harsh truth of a life suspended by technology. She looks at the limp hand resting on the white sheets, connected to sensors and wires. There lies the physical Fa, pale and fragile, with a ventilator tube providing her every breath. The entire group stands gathered around the bed, a somber circle of friends and family united by a single, tragic fate. The tubes and wires crisscross the room like ropes, binding them all to a reality they can no longer escape. Fa gazes at the spectral hand of her own guilt, a haunting reminder of the lives she's stalled by remaining in this state. She looks down, her expression clouded with a heavy, melancholic realization of the burden her family carries. Beside her, Darin is unable to maintain eye contact, her posture stiff with unspoken grief. The weight of the moment causes Darin's heart to skip a beat, the physical manifestation of her internal struggle. Fa reaches out and leans against her sister, seeking a shred of comfort in their shared tragedy. She rests her head on Darin's shoulder, a silent admission that she can no longer carry this weight alone. The two sisters stand in a somber embrace, connected by a decade of shared pain and silence. Fa lets out a faint, tragic smile, finally accepting the grim reality of her situation. They look toward the hospital bed together, staring at the physical shell that has defined their lives for 10 years. May approaches the bed, her voice steady as she introduces the parents to the person she brought along. She explains with conviction that Darin's musical soul is a perfect reflection of what Fa once was. Fa has taken aback, stunned by May's audacity to speak so openly in front of her mourning parents. May continues her plea, revealing that she has been trying to convince the family of this truth for quite some time. A sharp look of determination enters May's eyes, showing she is willing to fight for Fa's legacy. She looks down at Fa's comatose form with a gaze overflowing with genuine, selfless love. A soft step forward breaks the silence of the room as emotions begin to boil over. May takes a seat right next to the bed, her presence serving as a bridge between the living and the lost. In a haze of memory, the two girls are seen in a moment of pure, ethereal connection. Fa looks on, deeply moved by the realization of how much May has sacrificed for her sake. A flashback reveals their first meeting, a chaotic and warm embrace that Fa once misunderstood. May appears radiant in the memory, a figure who loved Fa more than Fa ever loved herself. Fa's hands tremble as she watches the scene, her composure finally beginning to fracture. She watches May sit by the bedside, a constant sentinel for a girl who might never wake up. Darin begins to lead Fa away from the bed, the atmosphere in the room turning increasingly clinical and cold. Darin's eyes are filled with a complex mix of sorrow and resignation as she looks toward the door. May clutches her portable piano case, her knuckles white from the intensity of her grip. She looks up at the parents, pleading for them to reconsider their decision to let Fa go. Fa's mother places a firm hand on her husband's arm, standing as a united front against the younger girl's desperation. The parents look weary, explaining that even the medical professionals believe it is time to find peace. May's face contorts as she shouts, her voice cracking with the sheer force of her denial. Darin and Fa stop in their tracks, caught in the middle of the heartbreaking confrontation. The parents look on with hollow eyes, their own decade of suffering making them immune to May's outbursts. May falls into a desperate stance, begging the family to give Fa just a little more time. A dark, shadowed image of the comatose Fa serves as a grim reminder of the clinical truth they face. May's expression darkens, her mind racing for any possible way to change their minds. She gestures wildly, suggesting that Fa is simply trapped in a long dream and needs help to return. May cries out, insisting that if someone could just reach her, Fa would finally open her eyes. Darin looks on in shock as Mei points toward her, bringing her directly into the argument. Mei surges forward, her heart on her sleeve as she bets everything on the power of music to heal. Fa's mother looks at her with a chillingly calm expression, her patience finally reaching its limit. Mei recoils as if struck, her eyes widening as the harsh reality of the mother's words sinks in. She stands frozen, unable to process the accusation that her hope is actually a form of cruelty. The mother turns away, her silhouette framed by the sterile hospital walls, as she tells Mei to stop seeking someone to blame. Mei clutches her chest, the emotional toll of the rejection physicalized in her shaking frame. She shouts back in a final, desperate defense of her intentions and her love for Fa. The parents stand together, a wall of parental grief that Mei's youthful passion cannot breach. Mei's voice reaches a fever pitch as she declares that everything she does is out of respect for the girl on the bed. Darin watches the breakdown with a pained expression, caught between her sister and her friend. The mother closes her eyes, the exhaustion of 10 years of vigils finally visible on her face. She looks directly at Mei, telling her that she is the one who needs to wake up to the truth. Mei stands trembling, her hand pressed against her heart as her world crumbles around her. Darin quickly steps in, deciding it's best to take Mei out of the room before things escalate further. She places a comforting hand on Mei's shoulder, trying to guide her away from the sight of her pain. Mei looks down at the floor, her spirit broken by the finality of the parents' decision. Darin gently pushes Mei toward the exit, promising to get her something to drink to calm her nerves. Fa watches them go, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she is the source of all this suffering. She realizes with a crushing weight that her own selfishness is what has kept everyone in this limbo. Fa takes a resolute step forward, her bare foot hitting the hospital floor with purpose. A simple text box appears, signaling her final decision to give up her spectral existence. She wraps her arms around Darin from behind, her spirit merging for a brief moment in a final hug. Fa leans her head against her sister's back, whispering a silent apology for all the pain she caused. Her spectral hand rests on Darin's arm, a touch that feels as light as a summer breeze. Darin pauses, sensing a familiar presence and looking back toward her sister's spirit. Fa offers a radiant, glowing smile, her form beginning to dissolve into shimmering particles of light. Darin smiles back through her tears, feeling the warmth of Fa's love one last time. Fa lifts her foot, preparing to cross the final threshold back into her physical self. She stands before her broken, comatose body, facing the manifestation of her trauma one last time. The bloody shadow of her past watches in silence as the true Fa prepares to move on. Fa reaches out, placing a gentle, healing hand on the forehead of her sleeping body. A brilliant flash of light fills the hospital room, signaling the attempted return of the soul. Darin watches the light with a hopeful expression, her eyes wide with the possibility of a miracle. Fa's face is serene as she begins to fade, her spirit finally finding a path toward resolution. As the light dies down, Darin and Mei are left standing in the quiet room, the tension slowly dissipating. Darin looks at her parents, her mind racing with the thought that Fa has successfully returned. However, a sudden, sharp realization causes Darin's eyes to fill with a new kind of dread. The body on the bed remains completely still, the life support machines continuing their rhythmic beeps. Darin gasps in absolute horror as she sees Fa's spirit still standing beside the bed. She spins around, her heart racing as she tries to understand why the merge failed. A massive bubble of confusion and shock erupts as the impossible reality sets in. Fa stands there, her expression unreadable and her form still detached from her body. She looks down at her hands, her eyes wide with a dazed and confused stare. Darin can only gape at her sister, her mind unable to process why Fa is still a ghost. Fa's face suddenly falls into a deep shadow, her expression shifting into something far more ominous. A faint, chilling smile begins to spread across Fa's lips as she looks at her sister. She looks up with a hauntingly calm gaze, her eyes glowing with an unsettling light. Darin's face is a mask of pure, unadulterated terror as she senses something is terribly wrong. Fa speaks Darin's name, her voice sounding like an echo from a place far beyond this world. With a final, heartbreaking smile, Fa utters a soft apology as she begins to vanish into the darkness. Fa stands alone, her expression hollow and distant. She appears in her school uniform, a stark contrast to the ethereal figure from before. Facing her past self, Fa notes that she has finally found the courage to look herself in the eye. She reaches out, touching her own shoulder while remarking how she always seems to appear in such a frightening manner. Fa's gaze turns cold as she realizes there won't be a next time for these encounters. A dark realization crosses her face, understanding that her warnings were meant to wake her from a dream. She stands before Mei, acknowledging the harsh truth they both must face. Her features are shrouded in shadow as she admits they no longer have a future to dream about. Fa begins to glow faintly, her eyes closed as she accepts the end of her journey. Back in the hospital room, the atmosphere is heavy with the weight of the impending goodbye. Fa looks on with a bittersweet smile, her spirit beginning to fragment. Mei watches in horror, unable to comprehend why the merge didn't work. Fa stands by her own comatose body, the heart monitor beeping steadily behind her. Light begins to emanate from the bed as the connection between spirit and flesh finally severs. Mei and Darin stand frozen as Fa's spirit remains separate and ghostly. The doctor moves past the grieving girls, focused on his grim duty. Darin suddenly feels Fa's presence as the spirit wraps her arms around her sister in a final embrace. Fa whispers an apology apology for all the times she was difficult or annoying. She rests her head on Darin's shoulder, admitting her deep-seated jealousy. Her eyes reflect the pain of missing out on a life she never got to fully experience. Fa clings to her sister, her form becoming increasingly translucent. She attempts to lighten the mood, teasing Darin about her good taste despite their past friction. The weight of the moment sinks in as Fa holds on, unwilling to let go just yet. She acknowledges that Darin was the reason she was able to endure for so long. Stepping back, Fa lets the light of her spirit begin to fade into the air. She glows with a radiant, otherworldly light, thankful for the chance to feel love. Her feet begin to dissolve into nothingness as she takes her final steps. Fa moves toward her parents, expressing how much she owes them in this life. Mei can only watch, her eyes wide with grief as she witnesses the spirit's departure. Fa embraces both of her parents, a silent phantom between them. She apologizes for the lack of time they were able to spend together while she was alive. The three of them stand in a tragic, glowing tableau of a family that can never be whole again. Fa wonders if things would have been different if she hadn't dedicated her life to the piano. A vision of a happier, simpler past flashes by, showing her parents lifting her up in joy. She imagines herself as an ordinary student, coming home with a smile on her face. In this alternate reality, she shares a warm meal and casual conversation with her father. The table is filled with food, representing the mundane moments they miss. They laugh together over dinner, a dream of a life that was sacrificed for her talent. The vision of her happy life begins to burn away at the edges, consumed by reality. Her parents look around, sensing a sudden, inexplicable chill in the air. Fa weeps silently between them, her heart breaking for the pain she caused. She lets out a hollow laugh, realizing the irony of her genius talent. Covering her face, she laments that the piano she was so proud of only brought tragedy. Her expression turns frantic and distorted as the weight of her regret becomes unbearable. Mei is struck by the raw intensity of Fa's sudden self-loathing. Fa turns back to her family, thanking them for their unwavering support despite everything. She calls herself a useless daughter, a burden that they finally need to lay to rest. Looking over her shoulder, she gives one last gentle look to the people who loved her most. A serene, peaceful expression finally settles on her face as she prepares to depart. Mei and Darin stand together, two girls forced to grow up far too quickly. The piano sits in the darkness, a silent witness to the end of an era. Fa remembers the day she got her first piano, her eyes sparkling with innocent excitement. It was the first and only gift her parents bought for her musical journey. She played with such passion, unaware of how that gift would eventually consume her life. Her parents stand by the instrument, finally ready to let go of the object they clung to for so long. Fa's spirit begins to radiate a blinding light as she offers an apology to Mei. Images of their shared dreams burn away in a reel of fire and lost potential. The flames consume the memories of what could have been, leaving only ash behind. Mei stands alone in the void, watching the last remnants of her friend vanish. She reaches out toward a fading star, realizing too late that its light went out long ago. Fa offers one last smile, apologizing for making things so difficult for everyone. Mei's face is a mask of shock as the finality of the moment truly sinks in. Fa stands with her parents one last time, declaring that it is finally time to let her go. Fa's gaze softens as she prepares to say the words they all feared. The group remains paralyzed, unable to look away from the fading spirit. Darin stares blankly, her mind refusing to process the finality of the situation. Fa's presence begins to shimmer with a ghostly, translucent light. Tears well up in Darin's eyes as the reality of the separation hits her. The atmosphere in the room grows heavy with the sound of muffled sobs. Mei reaches out, trying to offer some semblance of comfort to the grieving girl. Darin looks at her trembling hands, feeling the world crumble around her. She grips her shirt tightly, the physical pain of loss manifesting in her chest. Unable to take the silence, Darin suddenly bolts toward the exit. Mei immediately gives chase, determined not to let her friend suffer alone. The parents can only watch in stunned silence as the chaos unfolds. Fa watches them go, her expression filled with a quiet, lingering regret. Mei finally catches up, finding Darin hidden away in the shadows of the stairwell. The red-haired girl is curled into a ball, completely overcome by her emotions. Mei slowly approaches and crouches down to meet her at eye level. She looks at Darin with a gaze full of unwavering support and compassion. With a gentle hand, Mei lifts Darin's chin to look her in the eye. Darin's face is a mask of pure heartbreak as she looks back at her friend. Mei pulls her into a tight, grounding embrace to still her shaking. Darin finally lets her guard down, weeping into Mei's shoulder. In a vivid memory, Fa sits gracefully at the piano, bathed in a celestial glow. Her fingers dance across the keys with a precision she only found in spirit form. She turns to the bed, reflecting on the strange clarity of her new existence. Fa looks over her shoulder, her smile bright despite the dim room. She moves to the edge of the bed, watching the figure huddled under the blankets. A small movement from the sheets tells Fa that someone is still awake. She laughs softly, teasing her companion for trying to hide away. Fa reaches out and gently pulls back the edge of the checkered blanket. She finds Darin underneath, her eyes already red from crying. Fa rests her hand on the mattress, offering a silent gesture of closeness. She opens her arms wide, offering a hug to help recharge their spirits. Darin remains turned away, her body racking with silent, painful sobs. Fa waits patiently, her expression filled with deep, sisterly affection. Seeing no response, she decides to take the initiative and close the distance. She begins a playful countdown, leaning in to bridge the gap between them. Fa wraps her arms around Darin from behind, holding her firmly. She nuzzles against her friend's shoulder, trying to share her warmth. Fa asks gently why the silence has become so thick between them. A flicker of genuine sadness crosses Fa's face as she waits for an answer. She whispers an apology, her heart heavy with the burden she's caused. Fa laments that she hasn't been the supportive presence Darin deserved. She closes her eyes, haunted by the promises she couldn't keep. The truth finally spills out as Fa acknowledges her own death. Darin's pupils dilate as a wave of absolute horror washes over her. She spins around and grabs Fa, her desperation reaching a breaking point. Darin frantically argues that it must all be some terrible misunderstanding. Fa looks at her with a calm that only makes the situation feel more tragic. Darin begs her to keep fighting, refusing to accept the inevitable end. Fa simply leans forward, resting her forehead against Darin's in a final comfort. A single tear tracks down Darin's cheek as she realizes Fa isn't wavering. She asks the question she fears most. Will Fa simply vanish one day? Darin clings to Fa's clothes, as if she could physically hold her in this world. Fa admits that the future is a mystery even to her now. She tries to crack a joke about how hard it is to actually get rid of her. The attempt at humor only fuels Darin's growing frustration and anger. Darin pushes Fa back onto the bed, demanding she take her life seriously. Fa lies there, startled by the raw intensity of Darin's outburst. A tear escapes Fa's eye as the weight of Darin's pain finally pierces her. Darin hunches over, screaming out her confusion and deep-seated hurt. Fa stares up at the ceiling, her own mask of composure finally failing. She reaches up to cup Darin's face, her touch light as a feather. Fa pulls her into a deep embrace, trying to absorb the girl's grief. She makes a silly face to try and coax a different emotion out of her friend. The two sit back up, the immediate tension finally starting to dissipate. Darin wipes her face, her eyes still shimmering with unshed tears. Fa offers a soft, genuine apology for her earlier callousness. She begins to explain the sheer terror she felt when she first realized the truth. Fa describes the chaotic storm of emotions that once ruled her mind. She admits the uncertainty of the future used to paralyze her with fear. A vision appears of a dark, unstable path that she felt forced to walk alone. Yet, she notes that fear wasn't the only thing she encountered on that journey. The image of two hands reaching for one another symbolizes the hope she found. She explains that the moment her hope vanished, the fear went with it. A spectral image of Darin begins to fragment and fade away beside her. Fa describes the hollow, empty feeling that has now taken root in her soul. Her eyes look distant, reflecting a world she is no longer a part of. She looks down at their hands, noting the lack of any physical sensation. Fa smiles, claiming that having no future means she has nothing to lose. Darin is horrified by the cold, logical detachment in Fa's voice. Fa cradles Darin's face, her expression one of intense, singular focus. Fa confesses that while she doesn't care for herself, she cares deeply for Darin. All of her remaining energy is dedicated to ensuring Darin's success. Darin tries to protest, her voice cracking under the emotional strain. Fa declares that she wants Darin to win the upcoming piano competition. Darin is stunned, unable to believe Fa is thinking about trophies right now. She argues that their limited time should be spent together, not practicing. Her frustration boils over as she rejects the idea of playing ever again. Fa snaps back, her own voice rising in a rare moment of anger. Darin cowers slightly, her spirit broken by the conflict. She whispers her intent to forfeit the competition and leave the piano behind. Fa grits her teeth, her eyes flashing with a fierce, protective rage. She calls Darin crazy for wanting to throw away her only chance at a future. Fa insists that Darin must use the opportunity to build a life for herself. Darin clenches her knees, her entire body trembling with the weight of her choice. She looks up, admitting that a future without Fa holds no value to her. Fa is left speechless, the magnitude of Darin's devotion finally sinking in. Darin scoffs at herself, claiming that she was never truly talented to begin with. Fa stares at her in shock, realizing how much Darin's self-worth has eroded. The red-haired girl breaks down again, labeling herself a complete failure. A mental image of their shared dreams shatters like glass before them. Darin turns her back on Fa, signaling the end of her musical journey. Fa watches her go, tears finally streaming down her own face in defeat. Darin hides her face in her hands, letting out a primal, agonizing scream. Fa can only look on as her friend is consumed by total despair. The scene fades out, leaving behind nothing but the cold, empty silence of the room. Fa looks back at her sister, realizing her presence hasn't provided the support she once hoped for. She envisions Darin's true potential, seeing her sister's hands masterfully commanding the piano keys. Standing side by side, Fa admits that she isn't the one who can truly unlock Darin's future success. Back in the room, Darin leans in close, begging for them to focus only on the time they have left together. Tears well in Darin's eyes as she demands they forget about the competition and the pressure from now on. Kneeling on the bed, Darin pleads with her sister, desperate to avoid losing her to the stress of practice. Their hands reach out for one another, seeking a physical tether in an uncertain and painful moment. Overwhelmed by grief, Darin hides her face, weeping over the cruelty of their limited time. Fa listens in silence, her heart breaking for the sister who is ready to give up everything for her. The two sit in the dim light, Fa admitting that she feels like she's destroying Darin's dreams with her own hands. Darin grips Fa's hands with newfound intensity, refusing to let her sister carry such a heavy burden. Fa explains that while they could hide in dreams forever, it wouldn't be a real life for either of them. With a pained expression, Fa asks what Darin would even have left once the dream eventually ends. The weight of those words hits Darin like a physical blow, her eyes wide with shock and realization. Fa questions if Darin really wants her to vanish while they are both trapped in a fleeting fantasy. Looking down, Fa admits the guilt of being the reason Darin might fail would be unbearable for her. Tears stream down Fa's face as she pours out her heart, begging Darin to reconsider her path. Driven by pure emotion, Darin lunges forward and pulls her sister into a fierce, protective embrace. Holding Fa tight, Darin whispers through her own sobs, trying to offer some comfort to her sister. Fa rests her head on Darin's shoulder, the weight of their shared sorrow heavy in the quiet air. She continues to speak, her voice trembling as she suggests they might have been better off never meeting. Darin listens, her expression hardening at the thought of a life where her sister never existed. Reaching out, Darin firmly rejects the idea that their meeting was anything but a blessing. A beautiful, tearful smile breaks across Darin's face as she declares Fa the best thing to ever happen to her. Fa is stunned by the declaration, her hands trembling as she processes the depth of Darin's love. They lock eyes, the silence between them filled with the tension of Darin's difficult choice. A vision of young Darin appears, huddled in despair over the piano she used to cherish. The child version of Darin turns away, symbolizing the passion she's trying so hard to bury. Darin looks back at her younger self, finally confronting the dream she's about to abandon. The image of the child asks if their shared dream is really going to end in such a sad way. Current Darin winces, the internal conflict tearing her apart as she realizes the truth of her own heart. Her hands clench the bedsheets as she realizes she could never truly leave her music behind. Wiping away her tears, a spark of the old determination returns to Darin's red-rimmed eyes. She gently places a hand on Fa's shoulder, signaling a shift in her resolve and her spirit. Darin pulls Fa back into a hug, this time with a renewed sense of purpose and strength. Startled, Fa looks up and asks if this means the competition is back on after all. Resting her head on Fa's shoulder, Darin clarifies that she won't let the piano go so easily. Fa's hand rests over Darin's heart, sensing the shift in her sister's spirit and will. They gaze at each other, Fa asking for one final victory to serve as their greatest shared memory. Embracing tightly, they find solace in the shared goal of making this final performance count. Darin looks at her sister with a soft, pained gaze, asking her not to keep saying it's the last time. Fa breaks the tension with a bright laugh, teasing her sister for being such a big baby. They tumble onto the bed together, the heavy atmosphere briefly lifted by a moment of playfulness. Lying side by side, they share a quiet moment of peace as they contemplate the road ahead. Darin gently strokes Fa's hair, acknowledging that they must make every remaining second count. Fa cradles Darin's face, reflecting on the parents she wishes she could say a proper goodbye to. A fleeting vision of Fa as a child standing between her parents serves as a bittersweet reminder of the past. Darin listens intently, her focus entirely on her sister's final wishes and legacy. With a look of absolute determination, Darin promises to play the best song of her life as a gift. A gentle touch to the chin seals the pact between the two sisters in the dim light. Darin vows to enter the competition and bring home the top prize just for Fa. Fa looks at her with such pride that it nearly brings both of them to tears again. They hold each other close in the dim light, the bond between them stronger than it has ever been. Nearby, the silent piano waits for the day it will finally be played with purpose again. Sitting up together, Fa mentions one lingering regret about the future she won't see. Using her fingers to frame Darin's face, Fa explains what she's most sad to miss. Darin looks through the frame, curious about the woman her sister sees in her future. Fa smiles radiantly, imagining the incredible person Darin will become at age 27. Surprised by the compliment, Darin's eyes widen as she processes Fa's hopeful vision. She looks away shyly, her face flushing at the thought of being so highly regarded. Darin laughs off the idea, doubting she'll ever be as popular or good-looking as Fa predicts. The soft light of the room casts a serene glow over their deep, late-night conversation. Fa brushes Darin's hair aside, her touch light and full of genuine sisterly affection. She strokes Darin's cheek, suggesting her sister would look great if she grew her hair out. They sit close together, Fa jokingly suggesting Darin should try to grow a few centimeters taller. Squishing Darin's cheeks, Fa insists she must stay healthy so her face doesn't thin out with age. Darin lets out a genuine laugh, her face scrunched up as Fa continues to tease her playfully. Darin reaches out to touch Fa's face in return, mirroring her sister's deep affection. From a distance, they look like any other pair of sisters sharing their most guarded secrets. Darin playfully covers Fa's mouth, telling her that she wants to see her sister's future too. She imagines a version of Fa who achieved her potential and held her own grand concerts. Fa beams with joy, finding the idea of her own success to be a wonderful and easy thought. Resting her head on Darin's shoulder, Fa describes how she'd look more like their mother in the future. Darin looks at her sister with a mixture of love and longing for the years they should have had. Fa tells Darin to watch closely, her expression turning mysterious and deeply focused. A soft, ethereal light begins to emanate from Fa as she prepares to share a special vision. Before Darin's very eyes, Fa begins to transform into the woman she would have become at 27. Darin watches in stunned silence as her sister's form matures into a vision of grace and beauty. Suddenly, Darin finds herself looking at a more mature version of her own reflection as well. The two older sisters sit together, sharing a moment that transcends time and space. They lean in, their foreheads touching as they celebrate a bond that will never be broken. Older Darin laughs with pure, unbridled happiness, her eyes sparkling with newfound life. Older Fa mirrors the expression, her smile reflecting the peace she has finally found. The sheets rustle as they shift on the bed, fully immersed in this shared, beautiful dream. They embrace with a depth of understanding that only those who have shared a lifetime could know. 27. Sunlight streams through the bedroom curtains, marking the start of a new day for the sisters. Darin and Fa wake up side by side, the bond between the living and the spirit stronger than ever after their shared vision. Darin looks over at her sister, her expression filled with a quiet, renewed determination to honor their pact. Fa remains still, her presence glowing faintly in the dim morning light as she watches over Darin. Darin's hand reaches out toward the fading light of her sister's form, a silent promise lingering in the air. She sits up and looks out the window, ready to face the world for the sake of their shared dream. At school, the sun reflects off the modern glass buildings as classes finally let out for the day. Her classmates approach her desk, eagerly inviting her to hang out and grab some food at Siam. Darin politely declines the offer, explaining that her schedule has become quite packed with responsibilities lately. The girls exchange a competitive look, wondering if Darin is avoiding them because of her rival, May. They joke about how they can't possibly compete with an international schoolgirl like May. Darin clarifies that her busy schedule isn't about rivalry, but her intense preparation for the piano competition. She gives them a bright, reassuring smile, making it clear that she still values their friendship. The classmates watch her leave, struck by her sudden aura of confidence and grace. One of the girls sits back, clearly impressed by Darin's focused and professional attitude. Her friend agrees, noting that Darin's charm seems to have reached a whole new level. Back at home, Darin's fingers fly across the keys in a rigorous and disciplined practice session. She eventually stops, exhausted, while Fa watches over her from the side of the instrument. Sitting together on the bench, Darin expresses her growing concern about May's recent silence. She leans in, explaining that May has been distant and unresponsive since their last hospital visit. Darin clenches her fist, feeling helpless because she doesn't know how to reach out to her rival during this time. Meanwhile, in a different room, sheet music lies scattered across the floor in complete disarray. May sits at her own piano, looking defeated as her teacher stands behind her with crossed arms. The teacher scolds her, pointing out that her playing has become uncharacteristically messy and unfocused. He looks down at her from a wide angle, questioning if she even wants to win the competition anymore. He places a firm hand on her shoulder, suggesting that she is simply wasting both of their time. He tells her to take a break until she can manage to pull herself back together. With a cold finality, he advises her to withdraw from the competition if she can't get her head straight. May sits alone in the back of a car, the sunset casting long, somber shadows over her face. Her aunt Mal drives her home, glancing back at the girl's stony silence with deep worry. They arrive at their large, modern estate as the last light of day fades away into the evening. During dinner, May stares blankly at her plate, her appetite completely gone despite the meal. Mild and a younger relative watch her closely, the tension at the table becoming unbearable for everyone. Later that night, Mild taps her cigarette against an ashtray on the balcony to clear her mind. She sighs into the night air, frustrated by May's refusal to open up about what's bothering her. Mild finds May's uncharacteristic depression more annoying than her usual arrogant behavior. She leans back on the lounge chair, realizing that raising a teenager is far harder than she expected. Clutching her head, she admits that May likely needs a friend her own age to talk to. An idea strikes her as she gazes out at the dark horizon, hoping she can someone to help. Mild makes a video call to Darin, teasingly referring to her as May's girlfriend to get her attention. Darin sits on her bed with Fa, frantically denying the relationship while listening to the aunt's plea. She holds her phone tight, listening as Mild explains that May is in a very dark place. Fa watches Darin's face, seeing the conflict and concern growing in her sister's eyes. The call ends abruptly, leaving Darin staring at the disconnected screen in total shock. Darin hides her face in her hands, overwhelmed by the pressure of having to comfort her rival. Fa rests her chin on her hand, asking why Darin is so stressed about such a simple request. Darin looks up, explaining that she honestly doesn't know what she could possibly say to help. She worries that if she tells May that Fa's departure was the right choice, it will only make things worse. Fa listens intently as Darin admits she feels like an outsider in May's complicated family drama. Fa places her hands on the bed, shifting the focus back to Darin's personal feelings. She looks Darin in the eye and asks if she still wants to help May, despite them being rivals. Darin stands firm, stating that while they are rivals, May is also an incredibly important friend. She adds that if she's going to beat May, she wants to do it when May is at her absolute best. Fa smiles and tells Darin to go, promising to assist in her own way. She instructs Darin to just stay by May's side, even if she doesn't know what to say. Fa stands tall with a confident look, vowing to handle the spiritual side of the problem herself. Soon after, Mild knocks on May's bedroom door, announcing a special delivery has arrived. May cautiously opens the door, surprised to see her aunt standing there with a smirk. Darin steps out from behind Mild, waving nervously as she enters the room. May immediately grabs Darin's arm and pulls her inside, telling her aunt to stay out. Mild stands in the hallway, crossing her arms and feigning offense at being excluded. Darin looks down at the floor, apologizing for the sudden and unannounced intrusion. She notices Fa has followed her in, though only she can see the spirit hovering nearby. Darin looks around the room, sensing the heavy and dark atmosphere of May's private space. Her foot accidentally brushes against a piece of paper lying on the floor. She quickly kneels to pick it up, terrified that she might have stepped on something important. Darin looks up with wide eyes, bracing herself for May's legendary temper to flare up. Instead, May looks toward her piano, stating that she doesn't even care about the sheet music anymore. May confesses that she hasn't touched the piano once since the day they left the hospital. Darin is horrified to hear that May is seriously considering withdrawing from the competition. May curls up on her bed, hugging a pillow tightly and calling herself a total loser. She buries her face in the pillow, explaining that she got into a massive fight with her parents. May's eyes are filled with a hollow sadness as she recounts the pain of arguing with her own flesh and blood. From above, the distance between the two girls feels vast as May describes her internal emptiness. Darin reaches out, her hand trembling as she tries to find the right way to comfort her friend. Her fingers hover just inches away from May's head, hesitating in the tense silence. Fa appears beside Darin, telling her to just go ahead and offer a hug or a pat on the head. She gives Darin a playful, encouraging wink, reminding her that she isn't a jealous spirit. Fa's hand begins to glow with a soft, ethereal light as she prepares to intervene. She tells Darin she's going for a walk, leaving the two girls alone for a moment of true connection. Fa vanishes into a swirl of blue light, leaving Darin to handle the situation on her own. A piece of sheet music flutters in the air, signaling a shift in the room's energy. Darin finally pulls May into a warm, supportive embrace, promising her that everything will be okay. Fa walks through the hallway, her mission to find the source of May's pain beginning. She stops at a door, determined to finally uncover the truth about who May really is. Outside, the moon shines brightly over the quiet, modern mansion. Mild rounds up the younger kids for bed, while Darin and May head upstairs together. The aunt playfully drags a protesting child away, giving the older girls some much-needed privacy. A hand reaches out and flips the light switch, plunging the bedroom into darkness. Darin and May lie in bed together, with May accusing Darin of being part of her aunt's meddling plan. Darin laughs nervously, asking May not to be too mad at her aunt for caring. She turns on her side, admitting that even if it was Mild's idea, her own worry for May was genuine. May looks at her in the dark, a faint blush creeping onto her cheeks at Darin's honesty. They face each other, the moonlight highlighting the soft, vulnerable expressions on their faces. May jokes that if Darin keeps being this sweet, she might end up liking her even more. Their hands find each other under the covers, fingers interlocking in a gesture of pure friendship. They hold on tight, the silent bond between them providing more comfort than any words could. While they sleep, Fa's spirit form hovers over them, watching the peaceful scene. She looks down at May, wondering why the girl felt the need to fight her parents so fiercely. Fa descends toward May, her glowing form beginning to merge with the sleeping girl's aura. She leans down and presses her forehead against May's, entering the realm of her subconscious. Suddenly, Fa finds herself sitting at a piano in a strange, starry void. Her bare feet dangle over the edge of the platform as she senses a presence approaching. A young version of May appears in the dreamscape, looking up at the spirit on the piano bench. Fa turns around, her eyes widening in shock as she catches a glimpse of the young girl's face. She gasps, realizing that there is something hauntingly familiar about the child's features. Fa stares intensely, trying to place where she has seen this version of May before. The young May stands there with her hands clasped, looking exactly like someone from Fa's forgotten past.